she hasn't started officially.
Well, they never tried to. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah. I was at the middle school and I'm like walking around with my map and the schedule on my phone.
I never figured this out.
No. Somebody's like, you know where you're going? And I'm like, no, I don't.
T minus 20 seconds. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Board of Education meeting of September 12th, 2023. I know we can all smell the fall weather in the air conditioning. So standing as you are able, we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and it'll be led by Mr. Brad Gerby.
Hey, here we go.
Thank you, everybody. This is our public comment section. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. Please note that students will be given priority to speak on any topic. The first public participation section of the meeting will be limited to 1/2 hour, 30 minutes normally, and limited to agenda items. The second public participation portion will be offered at the end of the agenda to allow for any other comment. Individuals addressing the board should take into consideration the rules of common courtesy. The public participation portion cannot be used to make personal attacks against a board member, district employee, or student. We have 6. One more came in. Okay, we have we have 6 comments this evening, and I'll let you know who's on deck. So we're starting with Ann Jeffers, followed by on deck is Corey Belote, because this is, baseball season. I'll say on deck. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here to express my disappointment in you, the board. The majority of you ran on campaigns that were pro-DEI and pro-LGBTQ inclusion, but your feedback on the opt-out policy is either for parents' rights or focused on non-issues like frog dissections and calorie counting. I have yet to hear a parent speak at the podium on these non-issues. Instead, what I've heard is a loud cry against the policy by parents of LGBTQ kids who fear erasure from the curriculum. What I have also heard is anti-LGBTQ bigotry being spouted off at the podium, so vile that my child and I had to walk out of a policy committee meeting geared toward gathering community feedback, ironically using the bridges of civility. You are not allies, and this is clear in how you choose to treat the very few Black and LGBTQ people who have served on your board. A word of advice: when people representing a marginalized community tell you that a policy has potential harm, it is good practice to listen to them. The opt-out policy in Saline is not being considered in a vacuum. There is a nationwide effort to use opt-out policies to erase Black and LGBTQ content from the curriculum, but you choose to ignore it. Trustee Estep very eloquently stated this at the last meeting, and you were quick to change the subject back to eating disorders, a non-issue that could easily and discreetly be worked out with the school social worker. The DEIAC advised you that advised you to have language prohibiting opt-out based on identity, and you chose to ignore it. The public has raised similar concerns, and yet you pat yourself on the back for creating this masterful opt-out policy. Based on some of the things said at the last meeting, I want to make you aware that you, the board, are overwhelmingly out of touch with what is actually going on in the district. Parents are already opting their kids out of SEL and Hornet Time. Parents are already having their kids removed from teachers who are too woke. Parents are already pushing to have flags removed from classrooms. If you don't know what's going on in your district, frankly, you have no business being on this board. Lastly, I keep hearing the same argument in support of religious freedoms. Have any of you read Policy 2270 on religion in the curriculum? Religious opt-outs are already covered in the policy, and it is a beautifully written policy. Why on earth do we need to have an even broader opt-out policy that provides no limits on the topics to be opted out of? a policy that is written such that any old bigot can opt their kid out of materials containing LGBTQ or black people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Corey Belote, followed by David Rosenfeld.
All right, good evening. In regards to the opt-out policy, I've considered myself lucky. I don't have to stress over getting my kid's lesson plan or book list for the trimester so that I can research the list for a topic to opt out of. I believe every child deserves to see themselves represented in their school, and that my blue-eyed white children need to learn about and be around kids who are different from them. I always thought that it must be fear that caused parents to opt their kid out of a story. Are they that afraid that their kid will become gay or transgender because they hear a story read to them or they read a book themselves about an LGBTQ person or family? Recently, though, a friend explained to me that she thought it wasn't fear so much as it was their strong religious conviction that caused them to opt out of a topic. That made me think about my family and my religion. I left the Catholic Church that we had been members of since 2000 because it did not accept my child. I chose my child over my church. God created my child and gave that child to me. So I found a new church recently, one that is welcoming, accepting, and best of all, loving. Interestingly enough, the prayers are basically the same. Most of the songs are the same. There's less kneeling, but the major difference between my new Christian church and the last is inclusion. Everyone is welcome. Our bishop is a woman, and she happens to be lesbian. So now I'm thinking that I should follow what other parents are doing. And in the name of my religion, get a list of my kids' books and lesson plans, because now I'm going to have to opt my kid out of all books based on heterosexual, cisgender families, because I find that material to be personally objectionable. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey Belote. David Rosenfeld, and on deck, Viva Rosenfeld.
The bottom line is this. Can you hear me okay? Allowing parents to opt their kids out of lessons and or teaching materials merely because they contain LGBTQ representation or because they contain, let's say, the truth about racism in our country is wrong. It's contrary to best practices. It's contrary to Michigan Board of Education guidance, and it's contrary to Saline area schools' own mission and compass. It also harms kids. It harms LGBTQ kids and other marginalized kids the most, but really, for reasons that have been explained to you by myself and others, it harms all SAS students across the board. And yet, that is precisely what the board seems poised to do, against your own legal counsel's advice, by ratifying the policy that is under consideration tonight. The ability to opt students out of public school curricula is not, as has been made abundantly clear, a right parents have under the law. Rather, it is a privilege which you seem prepared to extend to them, even though you know, or should know, that doing so will continue to make SAS a hostile environment for many marginalized students. As has been pointed out to you by others, this policy is being exploited by certain Saline parents as part of a nationwide effort by elements of the far right to either prevent or severely restrict inclusive education in public schools. The battle is by no means unique to our district. If you truly believe what you say, that you want our schools to be inclusive spaces where all Saline students can feel safe and learn and receive the highest quality education possible, then I suggest you take a hard stand tonight, do what you were elected to do, and tell parents that they cannot opt their kids out of educationally and developmentally appropriate inclusive lessons. And if they do so, no alternative lessons will be provided, and the lessons will not be excused. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenfeld. Viva Rosenfeld, followed by Chan Ming Fan.
It seems like there's a common theme tonight so far with statements. This has been something that's been on my mind for several months now. And I'm gonna start off with former school board trustee Candace Jones in February of 2022, sat there at those tables with most of you all and talked about her child's experience of being called the N-word. School board came up with a statement, and people on this board talked about how disgusting that was. Then we come almost a year later, May 2023, and one of your colleagues, partners, spouses, gets up here and tells you about their child's bullying and harassment. And there is silence from this board, who mostly, all of you, ran on DEI platforms. The disgust that I have, that you've shown, is beyond. And by now passing this policy, you are codifying what you are showing the district is okay. Your anti-harassment, your anti-bullying, and your hate speech policies, they're pretty much voided by this policy because you have said it's okay to opt out of lessons that pertain to someone. Don't call yourselves allies if you can't actually represent the people you said you're representing. The environment you're creating is going to continue to trickle down and not leave this district at all. That is why I pulled my children out of this district, and in no way am I going to tell anyone to send their child here if they are from a marginalized group, because you all are showing them you don't support them. It's a disgrace. Shame on you for not acknowledging the child that was harassed of your colleague. But shame on you even more for not protecting the rest of the kids out there that need to be protected from the parents that stand up here and speak their hate week after week.
I'm the last one, Saline, though.
And followed by Tiffany Alexander.
Thank you. Good evening. Changming fan, local residents, local social entrepreneur. I have 3 things to share with you. Number 1, I want to thank the wonderful work by Tracy, director of FSAS. I try to sell and tell the city council, everybody bring $1 million, have a wonderful lunch. We need to raise money. And that is, I'm here. One of the reasons is that we really have to think bigger picture. Saline is a great school. Allow the people have all kinds of opinion, come over and send a kid to the public school, use taxpayers' money. But that's not enough. That's why FSAS it is about. However, the bigger picture is there are tons of more money down there. The nice couple, Eric and Wendy Schmidt, they have the foundation called RISE. Talented people can apply, the good project can apply, they will support. Why don't we try to get that money? So I'm behind that. This is the first thing. Second thing is I want to thank the trustee, Susan and Jenny, the good work. We have a chance to talk about all of the racial discrimination things. But there are some schedule. We have more urgent things because when they graduate, they gotta get a jobs. The school have 3 things, more than just one thing. Education, education, education. Education first, they have to learn at least STEMs and also other things, such as biomimics and other things. Secondly, they can educate by themselves. And thirdly, they educate us. So AI, ChatGPT, all of things need the younger people to lead us, which is last time I talked to. You guys are the volunteer at, we met, so both of them are the student leaders. I think we should have 3, because of they should have 1 vote. 3 of them, if agree, with 1 vote to decide. But anyway, they joined people like me to follow the queen of volunteer in this town and raise a lot of money. So we have to say that this is positive things everybody should learn. I learned a lot from them. So the volunteerism is the spirit of this town, not just liberation, freedoms. So time is for everything. That's from rock and roll, from Bible. We need to consider time is, what did I say? It's time for everything. So now we should really, really think about what is the most urgent things. Thank you so much.
Tiffany Alexander, thank you.
Hello. So everybody knows where I stand on what this policy needs and should be about. One sentence, it needs to have teeth that says you cannot just opt out of identities. So I'm not going to repeat everything I've ever said. Clearly, people are going to opt out of my child. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my child. And if anybody wants to opt out, I guess they can just walk out, because that's the only thing they can do, unlike applying to opt out of my child. My child has multiple identities. They are Black, they are non-binary, they are pansexual. They turned 17 in November. They just got their driver's license. My child served on CAB for this school district. My child currently serves on a youth council, and will be interviewing, should be interviewing right now with Moash for their sex education youth council. My child took a pre-college college course at College for Creative Studies this summer in transportation design, which is their long-term goal. They were one of 8 children in the entire country to receive a full scholarship for that. They are currently in the dual enrollment program that Saline provides. That's where they just came from. In another college course, they are one of 2 kids in the entire class who are high school students. The rest are all freshmen and sophomore. My child is kind, courageous. My child chooses to not be on social media. They were not allowed until last year, but have chosen not to because they do not like the drama. My child is miraculously impervious to peer pressure. If you try to pressure them into something, they just don't want anything to do with you. My child has stood up to conversion therapists who told them to their face that their opinions didn't matter. People in the room said, we were going to stand up for your kid, but they did not need any help. My child is polite, well respected by their teachers, their admin. During COVID, when I was sick for 27 days and my husband still had to work, they raised their little sister for those 27 days because there was nobody else to do it. What you're encouraging, some of you anyway, is opting out of my child. The reality is my child is not a harm when they say it's my parents' rights to protect my kid. This is the child you want to protect them from. My child has never harmed anybody in this district. Although my child has a lot of things to say to certain people in this district, they would never be rude or disrespectful to anyone. They were raised better than that. They deserve to walk into the school and see themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. We have 2 items for the an extended public comment this evening, and Mr. Kevin Arul will join us. He is a Saline Middle School student, 8th grader, senior patrol leader, Troop 416. Cool kids say the 416. Oh yeah. I don't know.
Is that actually true or not?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We've been working at trying to get Kevin here for quite a while, and I'm glad it worked out.
To move the slide, do I just? Oh, sorry.
He's working on some technical issues.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Kavin Rule. I go to Saline Middle School. I am currently in 8th grade. I've been part of the scouting organization for around 8 years now. I've been part of Troop 416s, or Boy Scouts, for 3 years, and I've been a part of Cub Scouts for 5. I'm the senior patrol leader of Troop 416, which is the highest youth leadership position in our troop currently. Before we start, I would like to talk about what Boy Scouts is, or now it is called Scouts BSA. I don't think a lot of people understand how big the scouting organization is. The BSA organization is one of the largest scouting youth organizations in the United States. Being a part of a troop is just one unit of that. Boy Scouts was founded in 1910, and in February 2019, girls were able to join this organization. So now if you go around, you may see not only boys troops, but now girls troops. I'd like to talk a bit about our troops history. I'm part of Troop 416, like I said. On the top, the dragon patch is our emblem. You will see it on the back of our neckerchiefs, and our trailer has it on the side. We have this emblem because in Wales, we have a troop that is the exact same troop, which is Troop 416. Our troop has served the community for over 50 years for Saline area schools, and not only Saline area schools, but the whole Saline community. Our troop was established in 1970 by the Saline JC's Club with only 6 scouts, which is not a lot to start with. We presented our first Eagle Scout in 1976, which is the highest rank you can earn in scouting. On January 1st, 2020, Mr. Josh Fraley became our Scoutmaster. And since our troop was established, we have presented over 70 Eagle Scouts. Our troop is a very youth-led troop, so which means all of us here, as you can see, run the troop. As SPL, I'm in charge of the whole troop, which means I have the most responsibility in the troop. For doing this, I have the help of my assistant senior patrol leader. Nick, would you like to stand up for this? That's my assistant senior patrol leader. And I also have Xander Powers, who couldn't make it today, but he helps with all the new scouts that join our troop and show them around our troop and make sure they feel comfortable. Nick Geringer helps me run the meetings all the way to campouts we have. Then we have our 3 official patrols, which we have our 3 patrol leaders. Only one of them could make it. Drew DeCara, would you like to stand up? So he runs one specific patrol. So there's around like 7 people, let's say, in a patrol, and they make sure all the jobs get done with using those scouts. And then we have our 2 other patrol leaders, and then we have our assistant patrol leaders who help them out. Now, none of them could make it today, but all of us right here make up the PLC, or the Patrol Leader Council. The Patrol Leader Council gets together once a month to plan meetings, all the way to campouts, all the way to high adventures for that month. Like I said, our troop is a very youth-led troop. And before I get into any of these activities, I would like to explain what a youth-led troop means to us. A youth-led troop means that our troop, like I said, runs all the activities and service projects for the whole troop. But we do have some adult leaders. Our adult leadership positions are Scoutmasters, Assistant Scoutmasters, committee chairman, and all the committee members. Our Scoutmaster is Mr. Josh Fraley, and then we have our Assistant Scoutmaster, Chris Myers, Doug Franklin, and one of our Scoutmasters could make it today. Mr. DeCara, would you like to stand up for this? He is one of our Assistant Scoutmasters who also helps Mr. Josh Fraley supervise us. We have our adult leadership positions to supervise us for safety and they're the people who really book our campouts. So, then we have our committee chairman, Christopher Wall. He is in charge of the committee. The committee has over 15 members, and I couldn't fit all of their names and everything, so I put 15 members. Now we can get into the activities we do as a troop. Our troop does a lot of service projects for Saline area schools, and most of them are Eagle projects. These projects have benefited Saline schools by, we had one of our Eagle Scouts landscape the west entrance of the high school. We had another of our Eagle Scouts make portable steps for the rowing team. And not only that, not only Eagle projects, but us as a troop give service to our churches where we meet at. Christ Our King Church is where we have our meetings. And we help all Cub Scout packs around us, and many more. A big thing about our troop is we take leadership very seriously. This gives a chance for each and every scout who joins our troop to really know what it means to be a leader. For that, once you earn a certain rank, you go on around a week-long weekend camp out called NYLT, or National Youth Leadership Training. In this, they will teach you how to be a leader for the position you have taken or will be taking. They'll train you for that whole week. Our troop also teaches a lot of citizenship skills, self-confidence, and public speaking. For example, today I will be speaking in front of all of you today. Our troop goes camping year-round, which means we go on at least one camp out per month. We've gone on over 12 campouts in the past year. And we go on one thing that our troop really likes, summer camp. Summer camp is where you go on a week-long camp out in the summer. And this year we went to Camp Rotary in Clare, Michigan. And our troop that goes camping year-round, we also go camping in the winter. Our troop goes camping in the winter under 32 degrees Fahrenheit over 24 hours. And once you do that, reach that requirement, you earn a Polar Bear Award. And our troop has earned over 4 of them in the past year. Our troop goes on high adventures towards the end of summer. Last year, we went to Florida National High Adventure Sea Base, where we got to get on a boat for a week and snorkel and swim in the ocean for a week, which was really nice. And then 2 weeks ago, we came back from our Great Lakes sailing adventure trip, where we also got on a boat, did a bunch of sailing in the Great Lakes, and got to go to Mackinac City, Mackinac Island, and a few places in the Upper Peninsula. Next year, we are planning to go to Northern Tier High Adventure. It's where you take canoe, you go canoeing with all your gear and have to carry that canoe. It's a lot. And then we go, in 2025, we go to Philmont Scout Ranch, which is the most known high adventures around the U.S. It's where you go hiking on different elevations for around 100 miles. And then there's Summit. Summit is another hiking kind of high adventure you also do for a week. Our troop does many more activities during campouts and outside of campouts. One that's picked every year, and the way we pick campouts, the PLC comes up, our leaders come up with a bunch of places we could possibly go and put it in a form and send it out to our troop. So our troop gets to decide where we go for that year. A place that always gets picked is indoor biking at Ray's Indoor Mountain Biking Park in Cleveland, Ohio. This place had amazing time where every year all of us get to go biking inside, and they took a factory, took everything out, and just put a bunch of biking stuff in it. Another thing our troop does, like I said, is help our Cub Scouts around us. And a big thing they do is the Pinewood Derby. The Pinewood Derby, they make a little car, put it down on a track, and see who goes the fastest. Some people aim for creativity. And this, we open a workshop for around 3 days, and each morning, all the way to like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, we have people come in and we help them build their cars and everything. Then our troop goes canoeing and kayaking a lot during campouts, and we go winter sports in the winter, shooting sports, horse riding, hiking, and swimming. These were some pictures we did. Like that top picture is from the Memorial Day Parade. And then we have snow camp out hiking, bottom pictures snorkeling. These are all the pictures from our activities we've done. Before I conclude this presentation, I would like to talk about one of my favorite things to do in this troop. A really good thing I love about this troop is our leadership. I like how everyone takes it very seriously, and everybody gets to learn, even if they didn't take a leadership position, how to become a leader. Our troop goes on many high adventures, and the past two I put down were the past two I've been to. It's an amazing experience you will never forget. Our troop does many community service, feels amazing to give back to your community and schools, and all the activities we do. But most importantly, I really enjoy spending time with my friends and my troop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I just want to say very quickly before I open to quick questions from the group, I want to thank you for being a scout. I was a scout for years and years as well. I think I probably tell you that every time I see you. And my friends in Tucson, Arizona say, what's the big deal about a winter camp out, you know? But I know what a winter camp out's like at minus 30 degrees. Yeah. It's a challenge indeed. So I want to thank you also for supporting Saline area schools and the community as well. And if there are any questions from the rest of the crew, please feel free to get my attention. Ms. Eastep.
Can you give me tips on public speaking?
A thing I've personally thought is I've never memorized any scripts. I've always kept a few bullet points, but that's it. Just a lot of practice.
Awesome, thanks.
You
You did
got your
great.
a free tip. Oh my God. Trustee Miller.
Thanks for coming tonight. I'll echo like the amazing public speaking, incredible, and what a representative you are for our community and for Boy Scouts. I was just going to say that I've appreciated many of the Eagle Scouts projects that have really transformed a lot of spaces in our schools, but also in our community at large. And so I applaud all of you for your efforts in that. And I know that that takes a lot of time and commitment. Yeah. And it isn't just the project, but it's all of the pieces that go along with that. So bravo to all of those Eagle Scouts. And then I just wanted to say that I think that the Boy Scouts, especially those who've reached the highest status and honor of Eagle Scout, just go on to do incredible things. And I think that Philmont Scout Ranch, the hiking, a friend of ours did it a couple of years ago. I think his dad had to train for 6 months so he could join him, and it was like a marathon training program. So if any of your dads or moms or anyone is going with you, I recommend training ahead of time. But that young man went on to be awarded a spot at the Air Force Academy, and so I think that just speaks to the incredible opportunity that Boy Scouts does in preparing future generations. So congratulations. Thank you for coming tonight and sharing about your troop in particular.
Thank you. Do we have?
Our student representative.
I am a part of Lithuanian Boy Scouts, so I understand all the community service and all that stuff, and it's super cool. I just have a quick question about your winter campouts. So when you winter camp out, do you stay in tents, or have you ever made an igloo to stay out in?
So the most of us stay in tents, but Nick, do you want to stand up? So Nick almost hasn't stayed in a tent in almost 2 years now. He's taken you want to talk about it?
Hey, Nick, if you're going to talk, can you come up and talk at the podium? That way, if anyone's watching on live stream, they can hear you as well. We want to hear the story.
So me and a couple of of our scouts do these survival shelters, and we do A-frame tarp, a tarp, and just put a rope around some trees or some scout staves, which are just poles, and we just stake down the tarp and sleep underneath it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. My first tent I had to throw out because a bear tore a hole in it while we were in it. So, yeah, it's a story. If just before you all leave, if the whole troop could stand up, and then we can just say thanks very much. Go right ahead. And then thank you very much, Mr. DeCaro, for your help. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Thank you. Is Stacy Rumsa? Oh, there you are, hiding behind Libby.
Good evening. So I'm Stacy Rumsa, the Executive Director for the Foundation for Saline Area Schools, and we have a lot going on in the next few months that I wanted to bring everybody up to speed on. First is our Hall of Fame that's going to be coming up on September the 22nd. That's the party on the patio where we honor the inductees and their family and friends. It's an alumni event. But the next night, on the 23rd at 7 o'clock, is the induction ceremony at the auditorium at the high school, which is where the 6 inductees will be able to talk about their experience in the district years ago, and we're going to have a dessert buffet after that. Those being inducted are Meg A. Scalling, and she's a distinguished alumni, as well as Emily Nash, and then we have Jerry Doc Hasberger, some of you may remember him, as well as Joe Schwartz, Ann Pellegrino, and Bruce Ross, who are all distinguished educators. So we have that coming up. The next big thing that we have coming up, you'll see here, is the Foundation Luncheon, Cultivating Lifelong Learners, with the tagline, From Little Acorns, Mighty Oaks Grow. So this is a free lunch that is sponsored by Brood Awakenings, and it's going to be in a new location. It's going to be at the Saline Middle School Gymnasium to show off the recent renovation, and it's open to everybody, and again, it's free. It is October the 5th, as you'll see up there. From 12 to 1, and we're also going to be highlighting 4 grants to kind of give everyone a snapshot of what the foundation's funds are used for, and we'll have the teachers and some of their students on hand to present those grants. The next thing that we have coming up, well, I shouldn't say the next, but we are bringing Blue Jeans and Bling back. So that is going to be at the Sheraton this time, and it's on March the 9th. And so our committee is actively working on all the details, and so more information will be coming out about that as well. I did forget to mention there are postcards out there on the table that give all the information, QR code to register on the back, or you can go to our website, so anyone interested can pick up that. And then the last thing that I have is this morning our Board of Trustees met and have agreed to, they approved a budget of $90,000 for this school year for grants. So a lot going on. Does anybody have any questions?
Did you choose a date in March where there will not be an ice storm?
Yes.
Thank
For those
you.
of you who are not aware, the last one got canceled because of power. So
And yet you managed to raise a lot of money.
We
Thank
did,
you for
we
that,
did.
those
So
efforts. You continued on.
we're
Well
gonna,
done.
that's right, we're gonna try it again, and this time have power. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much. I did have a response to public comment, but I'm going to postpone that and hold that under abeyance until next meeting. Revisions and approval of the agenda items may be added or deleted from the meeting agenda, and/or the order may be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. The agenda must be approved before proceeding further. I think there are some changes. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as revised.
Yes, as revised, to add finance report to discussion item.
Could we just have the motion first? So
Okay. I'd
seven-
like to recommend a motion to revise the agenda.
And
Support.
Supported by Jenny Miller. Thank you. So let's have your rationale, ma'am.
We had our finance committee meeting today, so Treasurer Gerby could report out discussion item number 2 in addition to our policy team. And then I believe you wanted number 7, student showcase, removed.
Yes, student showcase will be postponed this evening. Thank you.
And I will say that I'm prepared to provide said report, so
And I understand it will be brief and to the point.
I will try my best.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And we have an agenda. Thank you. Mr. Ellis, you are on. This evening, as we've done every year since I've ever been on this board, we've got a chance to meet the newest hires to the district, and I'll let you take it away, sir.
Thank you, thank you. I am really happy and proud to introduce to you tonight a number of our new hires who have been patiently waiting out in the hallway. We have a number of them here tonight, not all of them, as you might suspect. But you're going to see a group of people that some of whom have been working diligently all summer, doing professional development, some of whom were hired very, very recently. So they're going to come in, introduce themselves to you. I hope we all give them the warm Saline welcome that we're famous for. So if you want to come on in and introduce yourselves, it's a long line of people, I can tell you that.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Larios. I have a master's from the University of Michigan, and I'm the new Spanish teacher.
Hi, I'm Catherine Souders. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University, and I am joining the Alternative Liberty School team.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Harwood. I'm a graduate of Oakland University and Eastern Michigan University, and I'll be the new counselor at the middle school.
Hello, I'm Mike Mortensen. I graduated from Eastern Michigan, and I have my master's from Marygrove, and I'm teaching 6th grade at Saline Middle School.
Good evening, I'm Mike Sakarik. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University, and I'm a paraeducator at Heritage.
Hi, my name is Danielle Durante. I graduated from the Saline Young Adult Program, and I am at Transportation.
Hi, I'm Cadence Jones, and I graduated from Tecumseh, and I am a para at Heritage.
Hi, I'm Nicole Foster. I went to Eastern Michigan University, and I'm the art teacher at Harvest Elementary.
Hi, I'm Carly Melkonian. I graduated from Alma College, and I'm a new literacy interventionist at Harvest.
Hi, I'm Allie Holacek. I went to Wayne State University, and I'm one of the speech pathologists at Woodland Meadows this year.
Hi, I'm Emma Staffney. I graduated from Saline last year, and I'm going to Washtenaw right now, and I'm one of the paras at Woodland Meadows.
Hi, I'm Elena Musson. I graduated from Saline High School. I'm currently attending EMU, and I am a para at Woodland Meadows.
Hi, I'm Christy Campbell, and I'm from Manchester, and I am a paraeducator over at Woodland Meadows.
Hi, I'm Christine Kane. Military family, just moved back in the area, and I'm a para at Woodland Meadows.
Hello, I'm Gabrielle Udell. I went to school at Adrian College, and I am hired through the SWWC as an exercise science and sports medicine technician.
Hi, my name is Justice Manchester. I got my bachelor's from Siena Heights University and my master's from Barry University, and I am the social emotional learning coach at Heritage and at Woodland Meadows.
Hi, I'm Catherine Irfan. I went to Virginia and Wesleyan University, and I am also a social emotional learning coach, and I'm at Harvest and Pleasant Ridge.
Hi, I'm Stacy Williamson Carrada. I graduated from U of M, and I'm the school social worker at Heritage.
Good evening, Gary Sheska, building trades technician, and I have extensive work knowledge in the industry.
Hi, I'm Melissa Baird. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Heritage.
Hi, my name is Adam Dietrich. I graduated from Albion College, and I also help teach the exercise science and sports med class with Miss Udell. So.
Hi, I'm Emily Cohen. I got my bachelor's and master's degree from Michigan State University, and I am a school social worker at Saline Middle School in the ECSE program at Liberty.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Ballestero. I am a special education teacher at Saline Middle School, and I graduated from Eastern Michigan.
Hi, I'm Monica Sullivan. I got my bachelor's at the University of Cincinnati and my master's at the University of Toledo, and I'm the social emotional learning coach at the middle school.
Hi, I'm Sarah Forkey. I graduated from Western Michigan University, and I'm a resource room teacher at the middle school.
Hi, I'm Nicole Rogan. I graduated from the University of Michigan and Eastern Michigan University, and I'm teaching English at the high school.
Hi, I'm Brian Stuckey, and I got my bachelor's degrees and master's degrees from Michigan State. And I'm coming from Birmingham after 17 years there, and I'm excited to be teaching physics at the high school.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Moore. I just graduated with my master's from Eastern Michigan University, and I'm teaching special education at the high school.
Hi there. My name's Nate Gala. I'm a Saline grad, a Michigan State grad, and I'll be teaching math at the high school.
Hello, my name is Jamie DeBrinket. I'm a University of Michigan grad, and I'm also teaching math at Saline High School.
Hi, I'm Lauren Williams. I graduated with my undergrad at Western and then my master's at Northern, and I will be teaching family and consumer science at the high school.
Hi, I'm Carmen Chubb. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University. I actually did my student teaching here a long time ago with Bettina Hopes at Saline, and I'm happy to be back taking over the German program at Saline Middle School and Saline High School.
Hi, I'm Abby Miller. I graduated from Kent State University, and I am an HR coordinator here at Liberty.
Hello, I'm Kara Stemmer, former marketing teacher, and I'm currently the director of the South and West Washtenaw Consortium. Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, I am Kyle Zagata. I attended Eastern Michigan University. I am a dean of students at both the high school and the middle school.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas Coker. I went to Augusta University, and I teach special ed at the high school.
It's fitting that I'm the last, since I'm probably the most recent hire. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. I'm Donald Colucci, a retired attorney from San Francisco, and I've just been hired as a school bus driver. Okay, thank you.
We saved school bus driver for last, and we've hired another one since. We're working on those, I'm telling you. But this represents about half the people that we've hired, and so really happy to have them here. And again, if you just continue to give them that warm Saline welcome, I'm going to go out front and take a picture of them while you continue the meeting. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Donald Colucci will attest to this. I gave him a big hug when I saw him. Oh my gosh, yeah, there you go, there you go. And that's why. And I have been keeping track. I count 11 from Eastern Michigan University where I teach, so thank you. Hey, it's just, and 11, and 3 from other places, so anyway. Yeah, I keep track of this sort of thing. But there's no gambling, of course. We have a couple of action items. One, you're on the, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 22nd closed session for the purposes of collective bargaining, 8C of the Open Meetings Act. Do we have those minutes? Oh, that's why I was saying you're on.
Motion Gerby.
First of all, motion Gerby. Thank you, Mr. Gerby. And second, Mr. Austin. Thank you. Those of you who are in the audience new to this is a closed session, so we can't share the top secret minutes, but we'll do a quick review of them, hand them back, and you may sit there, yes. Oh, Mr. Fan, I have something for you. Sir, Mr. Fan, I have something for you. I did, I have. Yeah, I'll make sure they get it. Mr. Fan took photographs of our joint retreat, so thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes of our closed session of August 22nd, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, hearing none, we have minutes. Thank you. We have one scheduled report this evening from Kara Davis, Director of Teaching and Learning. This is our update on the Continuous Improvement Back to School edition. Dun, dun. I love that. Thank you.
I know. And it is a part of our annual cadence of reports in terms of our continuous improvement process, so we're really looking forward to presenting to you this evening. When I say we, tonight I have with me Caroline Stout, our district MTSS coordinator, who will be jumping up here momentarily. along with Jennifer Nelson, our literacy coach, who's halftime literacy coach and also halftime instructional designer, and then Beth Russo, our secondary MTSS coordinator. So we'll be alternating back and forth. And as usual, for my normal presentation, there are a lot of slides. Our intention is not to go through every single slide with you this evening, but to have them on record and for reference, especially for those folks who might see them after the board report posted online. So our hopes for this presentation are to review our district continuous improvement plan, and because this is about the 6th time that I've given this presentation, because we're in a really good cadence now, I'm going to go through it pretty quickly while also highlighting our 22-23 data story. So for both local data as well as our state assessment data, and then our continuous improvement plan, which includes our action steps and our strategies to address areas that we've identified as focus needs. As a reminder for listeners and for new people in the audience, Dr. Lotch had identified district focus areas as of last year, and we're sticking with a continuous focus on these 4 areas: academic rigor, culture of equity, civility and unity, and improving SAS for the future. And these 4 areas, alongside of our district continuous improvement goals, really help guide our work in our professional development and our work towards student success. They act as our guide rails in one way, shape, or another in terms of how we define our time and energy at the district level, as well as at the building level, and also with our funding choices that we're making. So at this time of year, we are really setting it up for success and launching. So part of Q3 is where we are resetting as a district after having reviewed all of our district data from the past year, including the survey results from our quality survey that I presented on in August, and our actual testing results, including our local and state testing assessment results. Onboarding all of our teacher leaders and our building administrators so that they are aware and a part of the conversation and have some voice inside of the planning process, and then inspiring actions for the upcoming year, which is now this academic year, and clarifying that path. So at this point in time, we've already done a couple of iterations with our our district level staff internally in terms of sharing these goals with them, and we've also started to roll out the data as well. So our continuous improvement goals, we have 2 in our Michigan Continuous Improvement Plan, one of which is increase the overall rates of mastery and content areas as measured by local assessments, course grades among students regardless of subgroup by increasing staff competency and the use of evidence-based culturally responsive instruction. And the other is strengthen social emotional support models in order to positively impact stakeholder reporting of SAS services as measured by the biennial perceptions of equity survey and the annual district quality survey. And as reported on in August, we did shift our focus at the district level to focusing our resources towards the social emotional learning that our teachers were asking for support in regards to creating safe supportive spaces for all of our students, having the tools and strategies that they need to be responsive inside of our school buildings and be able to provide those spaces where our students can really thrive academically. Academically, our focus areas for that particular goal tend to happen within our curriculum review, department meetings, and then of course admin meetings as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline.
Hi, thank you for having us. So we wanted to highlight this slide because this is something that we used last fall actually with a lot of our teachers, and we used again this year. We are really trying to shift a culture here around the use of assessment and data to drive instruction in our district. For reasons that are far beyond us, we have had some confusion, some fear around assessment and testing data in the past, and sometimes some conflicting priorities where folks have felt like maybe assessment or using data is the enemy of innovation, or you can be data driven and also focus on the whole child or SEL. So we're trying really hard to not only demystify some of those, increase coordination around this, align our goals district-wide, but also develop a shared understanding of what we're measuring, why, and align that with everything from our goals that we report on at the state level down to the work happening with each individual student to ensure that they get the best education that they can. So for that, it involves a lot of, well, Kara and I meeting and Tilt meeting and a lot of meetings with everybody, but a lot of aligning practices and systems and just making sure that we are doing this work for the right reasons, not just to check a compliance box, And we're really working this year on shared ownership and mutual support and collaboration around this. So Jen Nelson is going to describe some of the professional development that we've launched on this and some of the work that we're going to be doing with teachers around a new data protocol. That's only 3 questions that we're going to be doing throughout the year with teachers. So now for a whole bunch of slides with a whole bunch of numbers on them. So some of these are the same. We left some of these slides in here because we are aware that sometimes these get shared, and so we always wanted to have that context. So here's one slide with understanding cadence, understanding NWA. If by now you still have questions, feel free to ask them. This slide I had shown last year, just kind of talking about how each of our assessments kind of measures something slightly different. And I feel that, some of the assessments that we've chosen here that we're going to interpret first are the ones that are probably easiest for us to really use to measure and understand the impact of the shifts that we've made with curriculum and instruction over the years. So first we're going to go over the kind of local data trends, and then we're going to go over what we term state assessment, but these local data trends, again, because we're trying to be better and coordinate better, we actually also use these for our state assessments. So this is a snapshot, and then the graphs are coming next. So we're going to look at Acadians first and then NWA, and reading first and then math. So with Acadians, there's a lot of good news to celebrate here. We have a lot of areas that have improved last year over the year before. In a couple short weeks, we'll have updated scores for the fall. We actually just started collecting that data this week. And so there's a lot to celebrate. There's also a lot to celebrate in the foundational skills, which is an area that Jen Nelson has led a lot of professional development around. We've been doing a lot with curriculum shifts there, which is very exciting. For NWA, which we use 4th through 8th, we have students who continue to outperform the norm, which is really exciting, especially because the norms haven't been updated since the summer of 2020. So we do still have most grades where at least 80% of our students score above the 40th percentile. Not all of them, but most. There are some grades in which for a couple years we were seeing a downward trend during the pandemic, and that has started to correct. And there's some grades like 7th and 8th that are not correcting that yet. So that's something I'm eager to dig into with TILT. And then another that we are considering how to start reporting differently on is we are continuing to see disproportionality in our assessment outcomes for students with minoritized and marginalized identities. What we haven't quite figured out is how to track that over the years without showing you 35 different graphs. And what are some good markers of that? So I'm going to show you that, but again, know that this is kind of a work in progress. So we're going to go pretty quick through these. Again, I think you had access to this back in the spring, but hopefully you weren't spending your whole summer on it. So this is kindergarten. You can see the very last red bar was last year, so fall, winter, spring. This in reading in terms of K3, this was probably our most challenging grade, and not just with reading. That's why it was challenging. These are the students who were 2 and 3 when the pandemic hit. I don't have a perfect explanation for it. We've hypothesized here what that could be. We are continuing to see some good outcomes, but not like some of the next slides that you'll see. So here, if you focus especially on spring and first grade, you see a nice stair going up with the highest step being the last one, which we're almost to near pre-pandemic levels. Same with second grade. So when we hit that 80% and above benchmark, that's really what we're aiming for. We know we're always going to aim for 100, but we're probably not going to get there consistently. But at least 80% is a sign of a healthy system overall. Third grade, again, trending up, which is really lovely to see, especially for the last 3 years in a row. This is the graph that I create that shows that disproportionality. So again, green, in this case, our code is always green, meaning at benchmark. So at the minimum level to have a good chance of meeting the next big reading goal year out. Yellow meaning some risk, where there's a 50-50 kind of chance of meeting that reading goal year out. And then red meaning significant risk. So we continue to see certain groups, for instance, students with IEPs who continue to show more risk. Now, some of that does make sense, but obviously we want to work on that. We have accelerated supports for a reason there. Now we go into NWA. So again, NWA has always been harder for us to affect directly. It's computer adaptive test, so the test is different for every student, and the students just keep going till they hit that wall. So some of it we can account for based on what we're teaching them. Some of it is the stuff that they've gotten outside of their time with us. But again, if you look at, the last 3 falls versus the last 3 springs, that's kind of the trend that I'm trying to observe. So it's a little bit of a less decrease than we have seen before. And some grades look better than others. And then these are the 2 that I don't have an explanation for. And again, we're going to be looking into more that one in 8th grade here, which is the lowest that we've seen by the end of the year. This is the same kind of disproportionality graph with NWA, where the colors are broken out into 5, where red is still the lowest in terms of percentiles, 20th and below, and blue is the highest, 81st to 100th percentile. Not that 100th percentile exists, but all right.
Thanks, Caroline. So in terms of our state assessments, I'm going to start with evidence-based reading and writing, because that is measured on the M-STEP, the PSAT, the SAT, and then on some of our AP tests, where you see a combination of skills there. Also very optimistic about the results that we're seeing via these state assessments. They are harder to use to drive decision-making because we only get the results actually just in August, right before school starts, so we have to quickly process them and turn them around and then align them to the data that we've collected from the previous spring. So you'll see some of the bright spots and areas that we continue to interrogate in terms of needs for improvement. So in terms of evidence-based reading and writing, Saline students continue to outperform the state overall on all 3 of those different tests. When I talk about 3rd through 6th grade results, that's year over year, so 3rd to 3rd to 3rd to 3rd, so different kids but in the same grade. So 3rd through 6th grade are showing growth from pre-pandemic to spring and effectively achieving the results at pre-pandemic levels. Our 7th grade year-over-year results show a negative trend line across the 3 years. Again, those are different 7th graders, but from 2021 to 22 to 23, so on and so forth. But what's interesting is that pattern of low 7th grade performance is consistent with each graduating class. I've got a couple of different slides to show you, and some, we've hypothesized on why that might be the case. Our 8th through 11th grade year-over-year results show a steady trend line at or above 80% proficient or advanced across the last 2 years. And then our current 7th graders and then 9th through 12th graders outperform their pre-pandemic selves on their respective 2023 state assessments. And then, of course, we still see the continued disproportionality because that is a work in progress in our district. So within this slide deck, it's always a challenge to know how to tell our data story in a way that makes the most sense. So while we look at the Acadience and NWEA results through the lens of year over year, but within that same grade level, I've got a combination here where on the left-hand side you can see the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade trending across the same grade level. And that's where we talk about year over year. We can see improvements from from 2019 to now in some of those grade levels. And then I also have included the class of, we'll call it class of data. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but it gives you a little bit of a story because I know this is something that we've been monitoring really closely, is how have our students responded to the pandemic? What has the district done in terms of supports in order to increase their performance as a result of the experience they had in 2020, 2021. So in this case, you can see that the 7th graders, where they hit the pandemic, they were actually in 3rd grade, so there wasn't an M-STEP test there. And these are our 7th graders now. So this, you need to know when we talk about class of, that this is M-STEP, and these kiddos just took their test in 6th grade, and now they've started 7th grade. So when we're talking about class of, that's what we're referencing there. So you can see there's a positive trend line in that particular area, whereas our current 8th graders, there isn't. But this is where I mentioned that when you look at 7th grade across time, just an interesting data point, and especially for somebody who taught 7th grade for 20 years, is that 7th grade seems to be a very difficult year to take a state assessment. It could be because of the transition time, but as we go through these next graphs, you can see like 7th grade in 2022 for our current 9th graders, and 7th grade in 2021 for our current 10th graders, there tends to be a dip. So our hope will be that with our 7th graders this year that we see that same uptick because there's great improvement in the class of 2027 and 2026 as relates to their reading and writing. We're getting at 82 over 82%, and then 88% proficient and advanced. And those are, again, moving through the tests. You're moving from M-STEP in middle school to PSAT starting in 8th grade and then on to SAT by the time you get to 11th grade. So that's not the same test over and over again, but similar concepts. Here are 11th graders and our current seniors. So positive trend line up, still outperforming their pre-pandemic selves because we have the data going back that far. And still maintaining a high level of performance, right at 85% for our 11th graders, and then almost 79.7, I didn't round, 80% for our current seniors. And with our current seniors, the bigger line there is that we had disrupted testing due to our hybrid year where testing was optional. So we don't have as clear results for those particular years with that particular class. I also wanted to incorporate science. While science is a targeted test, inside of the reading and writing tests, you have a lot of science and social studies. And I wanted to pop this out because, again, in terms of what we can really look to celebrate as a district, we look at science and the story that our science scores are telling, and you can see that our science teachers, as well as our English teachers, are doing such a great job in terms of providing them the skills that they need to be successful. So our science scores have consistently gone up across the last 3 years that the test has been given consistently and with the same set of questions. And in social studies, this is not inconsistent with what we're seeing across the state and in our peer districts in terms of social studies being a lot harder for students to get that passing score on. But we are seeing trends in the positive direction. So while 8th grade is varied, they had a little bump in 2022. And again, these are 8th graders, 8th graders, 8th graders, 5th graders, 5th graders, graders. So it's not a class of, so there's not enough data to do that yet. We are seeing improvement in our social studies scores as well. And this is frankly an area we spend a lot of time in science, a lot of time in math, and a lot of time in reading and writing. And social studies is on the docket for next year as a part of our curriculum review. Yet we are still seeing an improvement with the across the last couple of years where you get those positive trend lines and reducing the number of students who are not demonstrating proficiency. So this is just a quick look at our state assessment results. I'm going to turn it over to Jen and Beth to talk a little bit about when we notice where there's areas to improve, the kinds of steps the district's taking to focus on those areas and impact positive growth.
Good evening, everyone. So while Kara and Caroline are walking us through the data, Beth and I really want to just pause and make sure that we're also centering the work that teachers and students are doing, so that we're not just looking at numbers and forgetting about the students and the teachers behind that. So if you look at this slide, you're gonna see some literacy related things that was happening in the district last year or might be starting this year. And I'm just gonna highlight 2 of those. So the first one that I'm gonna highlight, I'm gonna pick 2 from elementary, and then Beth's gonna highlight some secondary things on this slide. The first thing I'm going to highlight is I'm going to also give a shout out to the Foundation for Saline Area Schools. If you want the full story for this, you have to come to the luncheon. But a little preview and something we're celebrating is that with their partnership, we were able to provide more decodable texts for all of our K-2 classrooms. And decodable texts are books that allow students to practice the specific phonics skills that they're working on. And we were able to purchase some really high quality ones that students are really enjoying, teachers are using in small group instruction. And then on top of that, they supported a grant that I wrote with some of the department chairs so that all teachers could have some magnetic letters and materials to teach phonics and phonemic awareness in small groups in a way that's really engaging and impactful. And then the second thing that I'm going to highlight is some work that Caroline and I have been doing in the last year, which is working with a team of kindergarten and first grade teachers to look at the diagnostic assessments that we use at the K-3 level to determine if they were the best fit and make some revisions. So through lots of learning with these teachers, multiple iterations of possible assessments, and then getting feedback from the entire K-3 staff, we actually rolled them out this school year, which was really exciting. We did some training before school started, and if you're in a building, you'll even see teachers starting to use them right now. We're really hopeful that the feedback and the information that's going to be provided on the assessments is going to help teachers better pinpoint the next spot of instruction in literacy, and so far our teachers have been really positive about what they're seeing. We also are pairing that with some of our professional development in K-3 this year so that teachers feel supported on how to use the new assessments, but then once they have the results, what to do in response to the results. I could keep going here, but I'm going to pass it on to Beth, who's going to highlight some things happening at the secondary level.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here today with a voice for once. Since last time I was here, I wasn't able to actually speak. So I will highlight a few things we've been doing at the secondary level. As you know, this is just the start of year 2 at secondary MTSS. So some of the things we're doing are kind of what are some immediate things we can put in place and look at. So I will highlight a few things, one of which I talked a little bit about this last year, but we're using Ames Web Plus as a tool we can use as a screener, benchmarker, and progress monitoring. We're starting with that mostly with our special ed students in the secondary as those teachers were ready to jump in, but we trained about, I think it was about 25 teachers, and it was not all special ed teachers, so it's not exclusively those teachers, but we're hoping to expand that as we move forward. I also want to highlight the way we're using data. So we collect the literacy data, and we've started to use that and look at how we can use that to inform our student scheduling. So 2 things we did with that data this year were to look at students who struggled in freshman science, which is typically biology, and see if we could pull all the data we could, years and years, all different kinds of data, and see if we could find that one thing that pointed to students who maybe need a different track in science, because freshman science doesn't have to be biology. So we found it to be our literacy skills, and we really were able to work with the science teachers and the counselors and with parents and students and look at how we can schedule them into their freshman year and start them off on a better foot, hopefully. Another thing we kicked back into action last year was Home Archive, which is after-school programming 2 to 3 days a week. It's run by our teachers, and we use our at-risk data to determine which students should be invited. It used to be a teacher referral process or a counselor referral process, but we're really using data now to drive that selection process. And our middle school psychologists really dug into the data, as you can imagine, and we actually had 95% of our students who regularly attended Home Archive come off of our at-risk list by the end of the year. So that was exciting.
All right, and one thing that I wanted to point out, thank you, Beth, for that, and Jen, is that when we talk about referral versus using screening data, this is something that came up last week. I had a meeting of the Washtenaw MTSS Collaborative, which is a group that I've started around the county that now has all but 2 districts in it, which is very exciting. The reason that we do that is because we can know that we don't miss as many kids, right? If we wait for individual folks to refer, there's the potential that we might not be catching everyone that we want to catch. But if we use our data instead to look at who's starting to maybe fall behind in their classes or whose attendance is starting to slip, then we can make sure that we are casting a big enough net to kind of give the supports to all those who need it, not just those that have happened to kind of come up. So now going into math, and I'm mindful that there's a cricket reminding me of how boring I am right now. So the math trends, again, local assessments, but by this we also mean the ones that we're using for state compliance. It's just K-8. So in math, there's a lot of really exciting things to celebrate, in part because we have started in a different spot than with reading. So we talked last year about the fact that with the start of using Acadian's math in the pandemic, we have understood that there were some gaps in our foundational numeracy skills that needed to be addressed. And so we have done already some work there and planning to do more with a consultation with Dr. Sarah Powell, who's a leading researcher in the field this year. And so we're starting to see some nice consistent growth, not only fall to spring, but spring to spring for the last 2 years. And that's very exciting. We also are going to see some increase in our NWA scores and even in NWA compared to reading, which is really exciting, and just about across the board. So I'm going to get to the slides here. So this is kindergarten, Acadian's math composite. So again, like in reading, the composite score is going to take all the assessments given at that time together as an overall measure of performance and risk. So if you look at that nice stair step at the end of the year, that's what I'm most excited about. Same thing in first grade, same thing in second grade, and same thing in third grade. And the other exciting thing is that year after year, you can see over the grades that's getting higher and higher. And then this is, again, our disproportionality data, which is something we're trying to work on what format would be better to present in, and we're open to suggestions on this one. So this is NWEA. And again, if we look at the blue was 2 years ago, there's a nice step down there. That was the middle of the pandemic. And now we're starting to see that correct itself, which is really lovely. That's 5th grade, 6th grade in the same. 7th grade is kind of staying flat throughout the year, but it was decreasing, which is really nice. And again, this is the percent of students who are scoring at least average. So when we're looking at our goal is 80%, that means that 80% of our students are scoring above the 40th percentile mark, which is a really good place to be. And there's the disproportionality. Now Kara's going to talk about the state assessments.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And in terms of that last slide, we're talking about this and running through this pretty quickly. We did put it on our agenda for our December report this year to dig into the disproportionality a little bit more and talk more in depth about what we are going to do to address the disproportionality and try to create some growth charts that will give us and tell the story the same way that we're able to tell with the broader population in these results tonight. So just so you are aware that as we're rushing through those, it's not dismissing the fact that it's there. However, we do have a plan to address it in the future at our December board meeting. So in terms of state assessments, similar to what Caroline's just presented, there's a lot of things where we feel like our bright spots, a lot of things to celebrate, as well as areas that give us some opportunity to ask some questions and dig in a little bit deeper. So as with the evidence-based reading and writing, our Saline students continue to outperform our overall state results. However, we are noticing that our Saline student results are not returning to pre-pandemic levels as quickly as their evidence-based reading and writing. And some hunches around that was we spend a lot more time reading and writing in science and social studies, and the math skills that are used at this kind of level on these types of tests are very different than what you might experience, and they're very targeted to the particular course sequence and or work. So that's something that we're looking at a little bit more closely. But there are spaces where we can see the year-over-year trends from 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade are showing a positive trend line from spring 2021 to spring 2023, yet are not quite back to pre-pandemic levels yet. Our 7th, 8th, and 11th grade results are fairly flat year-over-year, hovering around 60% proficient in advanced for the last 3 years. Yet we do have a handful of classes that are making positive gains from pre-pandemic to now. So our current 7th graders, 8th graders, 9th graders, and 10th graders, whereas our current 6th graders, 11th graders, and seniors have a more negative trend line from pre-pandemic to spring and now, and there's graphs to represent that as well. And then we see the similar disproportionality for our state assessment outcomes as we do with our local outcomes, which is to be expected. So again, on the left-hand side, this shows you in the two graphs, the left-hand side is the year-over-year across a grade level. And this I feel like is important. I somewhat color-coded. It's hard to see there under 2023 that when we talk about a positive trend line but not quite back to pre-pandemic, if you look at 3rd grade, they're at 70.6% proficient in advance. They were at 75% in 2019. So they are really approaching that pre-pandemic level, but they're not quite there yet. Similarly, if you look at 2023 for our 4th graders, they are they're not quite, they went from 55 to 68, and now they're at 65.7, but they're not the same kids in that, but what they aren't is back at that 70% pre-pandemic. So that's what that chart on the left-hand side shows. And then we have our class of graphs. And here you'll see that where we talk about the flat trend line of around 60%, sort of this landing area for math. And again, we are outperforming the state results by quite a lot, and we're on point with what our peer districts are doing. However, we of course feel like we can do, we'd like to invest a lot more time and energy in this, which we are, in order to impact positive results for all of our students, because we feel like they are very capable and very able, and our teachers have all the skills that they need in order to boost these scores in the future. Class of 2027, our current 9th graders and current 10th graders, you can see that they are making gains in a positive direction, even though technically the trend line is down, or is trending down from pre-pandemic. Their post-pandemic scores are going up. More variable in our 11th grade and our senior classes here. So a little bit more flat across the years. So these are areas that we are examining, and Jen and Beth will be talking through some of the strategies that we're using to dig into our math work with our teachers in order to impact these scores. And I would be remiss if I didn't include our AP tests as a part of this presentation as well. And that is really positive results. So when you think about our gains in advanced placement exams, there's just a quick look at all of the AP classes we offer at the high school level. This does include independent studies. We've had 506 students take the AP test last year with a 92% pass rate, which is up across the last 2 years, moving from 85% to 87% to 92%, scoring a 3, 4, or 5 across the last 3 years, which is really wonderful. And I'd like to turn it back to Jen and Beth to talk through some of the similar supports to what we do with literacy through the math lens.
Again, on this slide, you're going to see some work that teachers and students are involved in, but this time through the lens of mathematics. And I'm going to highlight 2 things here, but this time I'm thinking about teachers K-12, not just elementary teachers. First, I want to mention the curriculum review process that has been mentioned a few times this evening. So we're in year 2 of our curriculum review process for math and science. I'm just focusing on math tonight. And we had a really incredibly powerful year of learning with our staff last year. It was a time where teachers K-12 could get together, talk about math, to do some alignment K-12, and to work on our practice. During that time, we identified some areas that we want to look at more closely. And this year we're excited to partner with Dr. Sarah Powell from the University of Texas. Dr. Powell has been able to look at our data as well and is going to provide some training to our students through the curriculum review process in the areas of mathematics that our data suggests that we need to continue to work towards. So we're looking forward to her partnership, but also the time with the K-12 teacher leaders taking on this task for their department. And then secondly, Kara and I have been collaborating for the last year on creating a data protocol to get teachers looking at data more regularly. And we tried this out with our building administrators last year and refined the protocol throughout the year. And we were able to train teachers and give them a chance to practice it at our teacher leader meeting in August. And that was really positive. And we've already started to meet with teacher leaders this year so that they can do it with their grade level or department. Want them to feel really supported in the process, and our ultimate goal is that we just have regular routines in our grade level and department meetings where we're regularly looking at data in a safe way that ultimately focuses on what we can do to impact student learning. I'm going to pass it on to Beth.
Okay, so at the secondary level, from the summer 2022 through last school year to summer 2023, we partnered with Great Lakes Educational Group to provide one-on-one tutoring with our students predominantly in math. So again, we use our data to figure out which students need the most support. We hooked them up with Great Lakes, and they did virtual tutoring that way. And we had great success, and we would bring students in for I-team or whatever, and they would respond to the intervention. But then we come to this school year, and that funding is no longer there. So we're now talking about what are we going to do next for our secondary students. And we're in close talks with Kara and the building admin teams and the math teachers at both buildings to start a math learning lab, which we hope to again, we'll use our data to decide which students will be invited and to do a balance of both remediation and give them the help on the homework and the tests that they have coming, because we know that's what gets the students there, right? If it's going to be after school, that's where we're standing right now, but we are having a very robust discussion in both really the literacy and the math. How can we bring this into the building during the day? So right now, a lot of our things are immediate, again, year 2. What can we do to help students right now within the context of the secondary schedule? But there's more talks too about what we can do in terms of classes and within classes in both buildings to help support our students in math and build those skills back up.
So I realize that when I'm presenting these slides, sometimes I try to go fast and sometimes I try to add a little humor because I'm probably the only one that finds it actually exciting. But I wanted to show some faces of the people who do the actual work and also just underscore what Kara and others have said, which is this tells part of the story. These graphs are representative of children, of students we're not going to stop until all of those graphs are looking all perfect. And so here's some of the people who are tirelessly working to try to work themselves out of a job. It doesn't represent everyone, but we wanted to highlight especially some that you might not see as often, you might not know. You met one of these today, Carly Melkonian, who is one of our 4 new interventionists. So these are our MTSS tutors who work with students K-5. We have 4 new interventionists this year. It seems like the last couple of years we've lost a fourth to a third of our team, so it takes several weeks to get us back. But we've really been able to have some amazing hires, and I just wanted to give them some major kudos because this year, among training on all the evidence-based interventions, on all the DEI content, and making sure that they know how to really serve the whole child, work as a team, collaborate with teachers, we also are just now changing to administering Acadians on an iPad, which, as it turns out, is like really hard for me to learn, but they're doing a really excellent job with it. So there's a lot of benefits, and that I'm making that plug because next time you see the graphs, they're going to look different. The whole website got a facelift. So they've been doing an excellent job, and kind of behind the scenes. Another team that I wanted to highlight is our EL team. Thank you, Ben. Similarly, these are our teachers who are working with our multilingual students. We partner with them a lot. The last couple of years, we've worked really hard to make sure that we are right in step so that our students who are multilingual, learning English and how to speak, are also learning how to read, and that we have the right dose of everything so that they're still included and they're still learning from their peers and from exposure and being in the classroom while having us remediate at times that make sense, and collaborating so that the parents of these students have also 1, not 5 different go-tos. So these folks work not only with students but also with families to really bridge that homeschool partnership and support them and any needs that they have related to language and learning. And so again, these are not all the teams. We didn't highlight our special ed staff. We didn't highlight our teaching team, but you might see those more often than these guys. And then this is Tilt. We just wanted to say thank you for your time.
And recognize that we've taken up quite a bit of screen time at home and airtime up here. So if there's anything you'd like me to jot down in terms of questions to get back to you on, I'm happy to take those now.
Thank you very much. I have no questions right now, but I'm opening up to the table.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was so in-depth. I remember the presentation last year. I recognize some of the feedback that was given last year, and it's been incorporated, so thank you very much. I'm going to dig back in after I heard it from you all, and know you are all available for questions, so thank you.
All right. First of all, I certainly also echo that and appreciate the efforts of our teaching and learning team. This is what we do for kids and all kinds of other things. So thank you so much for the work you do. So I have a wonderment, a comment, and a few questions. But again, don't spend time on them right now. But here we go. Wonderment. Kindergarten Acadians. So you were saying we don't know what's causing it. I wonder if this is tied to preparation that students have prior to coming to our schools now, right? So again, just a wonderment that I have about preschool engagement in COVID times. And so again, my brain just kind of went there. 2, a comment. I really love, especially as a science educator, hearing us talk to the use of literacy to influence scheduling and talking about it in a secondary lens. Because as a secondary teacher myself, I could tell you, my students as 9th graders, as 10th graders, they're still learning to read. They're learning how to decode challenging vocabulary. They're learning they're doing more of like, how do they decode something and then tell me what it meant, and you know, that kind of thing. So like, I have to tell you, like, I think that that's an outstanding thing to talk about, is how do we serve those students best with their schedule and not just keep pushing them ahead and not supporting that. So bravo. I thought about the same thing with math and that learning lab, right? About, you know, that into scheduling. So there's that. All right, here are my quick questions. Please do not send me an email or do whatever. Here we go. Slide 9 talked about assessments linked directly to curricula. I wonder, are those aligned with our SLOs for our educators and tied to like our improvements and that kind of thing? So I wondered about that. I wondered about the MSTEP, PSAT, and SATs, and if we could do anything as a voice, as leaders, to be able to, through our legislative coffees or anything like that, to talk to our legislators about how do we get that data sooner so that we can implement it prior to when we create our professional development plans and when we think about what we want to do for the school year. So that's one thing that was on my mind as a question. I am really intrigued, but I don't know a whole lot about decodable texts. I read about them as I was naughty and read for a second because I was intrigued. And the difference with that. And then the last thing is about openings. Do we still have openings in MTSS and literacy? And do you want to take a second and say, hey, we're really looking for somebody in these areas?
I'll say we're always looking, always. We just barely got like our last person, but I appreciate that very much.
Thank you for my questions and for everything.
Yes, and we're monitoring in terms of our EL supports the increased number of students who are English learners and the incoming newcomers and the impact on our services that we're providing the staff. We have to do that well. So it's something we're constantly analyzing. You're welcome. Thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge and applaud something that you shared in this particular presentation tonight around shifting the culture around assessment and how difficult that can be and how it's been made even more difficult since it's been linked to teacher evaluation. And when we talk about SLOs, that's what that is. That's the data that is tied to teacher evaluation. And so I think that because there's been some fear and anxiousness around that, we've lost sight of using assessment to drive instruction and individualizing things for kids. And when I say we, I mean collectively as educators globally, we've kind of shifted away from that. So I just want to really applaud your efforts, and I know that is going to be relief to a lot of teachers to start thinking about assessment in another way. So thank you for that. I would love to learn from you more about that too, because we're doing some of the same work. And then my only other question, I would love to talk to someone more about AP testing and accommodations for those kiddos who need it. I've talked to a few people, but continuing to have that conversation. And then lastly, a question, and you can answer it now if you want to quickly, but when you mentioned near the end, you were talking about the graphs and how we're looking for 80% or above. And then Caroline, I think it was you who mentioned something about with NWEA, you're looking for kids who are scoring above average, and you said 40%. Is that they're scoring above the RIT norm, or they're scoring 40th percentile and above? I just didn't.
If you're going to answer at length, could you use the mic?
I just was confused. That's all.
Should I answer that one or should I email it? Quick.
Or you can answer me later.
So it's based on the normative data,
Yes.
with the 40th percentile being the cut point for what they consider the average range.
Perfect.
But the problem and the reason that matters is because the 40th percentile, if you followed anything about literacy instruction in the country as a whole, is at risk. We have
Yes,
40%
exactly.
of our students
Okay.
who aren't reading professionally, so that's why that cutoff is there.
Okay, perfect. I was just a little confused because I was like, wait a minute, that just set me off kilter. So now I understand. Thank you so much. Thank you. And for the update too. Oh, one more thing I was just going to say, you mentioned this and I'll just affirm this, that both of my seniors have taken the SAT twice and they both told me that the ELA test is a science test. So there you go.
Thank you. A science teacher shout out right there. Yes.
Other end of the table?
Yeah, I just want to say, a lot of data, and you guys probably go home with a headache looking at some of this stuff. It is nice to see the trends going up. Yes, we're not pre-pandemic, but we weren't expecting to get there overnight either. Interesting on the from the beginning of the school year to the end on English, or I think it was English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one went down, and it looks like that for every year. But then on the math, it was going up. So I don't know what what the difference is there. I mean,
NWA versus our state assessments. They don't tell the same story, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was also encouraged with the Hornet Hive and the kind of the how that's been helpful for people and pulling people out of there. And I'm hoping that maybe the math learning hub could kind of maybe serve the same purpose and help them as well too. So that's encouraging.
Helpful. Thanks, Tim.
Well, thank you very much. We spoke earlier about flat scores in math. Flat, I can live with for now. But thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
very welcome.
all
Thank
of
you
your-
all
of
very
your-
much.
The team, thank
I
you.
appreciate your support.
Give me one moment. Right. Oh, well, we're going to do the finance after. I inquired of our treasurer. So we have two discussion items tonight. The one is the second reading of the policy 2240, controversial issues, formerly controversial issues, with any luck, called the instructional materials, opt-out. Trustee Miller will facilitate this one. And following that, there will be the Finance Committee update. Thank you.
So I think this is the second reading, so I think that because it's the second reading, that will just open the floor for dialogue, questions, or not even questions, just to me, questions to the colleagues at the table if you have them, and any further discussion. So I didn't resend the documents because you had them from the last meeting. If anybody needs those, I can support with that.
The most recent language, I think, is in the packet.
Oh, great. Yeah, yes. Sorry, I did see that, but I didn't send it ahead of time.
Without colors.
Without colors. If you need the colors, you can go back to the previous meeting. Okay? Mhm. Anyone want to get us started with the second reading? You can go ahead, Jen. Yeah. Jennifer, did you have something to say, Jennifer?
Sure.
Okay, great.
I was deferring if our two other policy committee members wanted to say anything first. I was asking them if they wanted to say anything. I wanted to, of course, listen to everything that you had to say. I went and reread it while I was listening to our public comment earlier. And something struck me about not opting out of identities. And so I went back and I read this, and it doesn't speak to exactly the language that I heard, but there was something that struck me that I would like us to consider changing, and it was, if after careful review of these instructional materials, a parent/guardian/student 18 or older identifies that the instructional materials are, quote, personally objectionable. And it was those two words that I paused at, because I've long thought we should change the name of this policy from controversial issues to something else. And those two words also led me to believe that people could construe that as calling a person personally objectable. And that didn't set quite right with me in the lens of reflecting on those comments. So I would like us to consider a slight change there. And then I wanted to ask a clarifying question, because some of the things that I've been reading online and hearing from people in the community and hearing here tonight give me the perception that there might be an understanding that this is a new policy, which it is not, correct? Because we've had this since 2012. The other policy wasn't called opt-out, but that's what it was intended to do. Is that correct?
So this policy is now called instructional materials opt-out. It is different than the controversial issues policy. So
But it would replace the.
So if my proposal, if some version of this policy is accepted, I would like to make a motion that we rescind the current controversial issues policy.
Thank you. So if I look back at the current one, which is also 2240, and understand this would replace, so that's great. It does say that the board recognizes that a course of study or certain instructional materials may contain, et cetera, it used the word objectionable, which I don't love. But it said a written request will be considered for particular classes for specified reasons. So we do have an opt-out policy. And I guess some of the flavor of comments that I've been listening to, not just tonight, but in the last few months, I guess, I've heard, I just didn't want there to be a perception that this was something completely new, that it is based off of something that allows for opt-out. And then the other thing that I did want to comment on is I'm extremely aware of, how to put this, the censorship of LGBTQIA plus characters in literature, of policies being discussed in boardrooms like this. I know that it doesn't have that language in either policy, and I'm not saying it should, but I also want to say that we should recognize that, but we should also really recognize that there could be a myriad of reasons why people would want to opt out of a particular curriculum. We did mention some. Lauren, I think you mentioned eating disorders. It came up tonight. I amplified that. Coming off the heels of a presentation from our athletics department where as many as 4 in 10 high school students have an eating disorder, I think is something, if there's something triggering in any type of curriculum, whether it be that, whether it be sexual assault or sexual harassment, where 8 out of 10 students encounter that, death of a parent, I don't care what it is. So I just want to recognize that there are many topics that we should be considering. And I just want to make sure that anyone's point of views, whether they have a personal experience or trauma, is recognized.
To speak to that, there were a couple reasons I brought that up specifically. So one, because it is such a large and growing problem that I deal with every day post-pandemic. And 2, probably most importantly, is that we had a student speak about that when we solicited feedback. So it didn't just come from something that I just randomly made up, or it came from feedback from the students. Yes, we have had a policy that was called opt-out for a while, and this is not new. And I think the major question that we face tonight after hearing, is whether we go back and try to add specific language regarding identities. We have tried to figure that out a lot. So I was not saying much more because I'd like to hear what other people think about that.
Can I chime in? Oh.
Susan, go ahead.
Thank you. So I guess a little clarity on the current policy. Well, there's a whole history. I know I've touched on it, that it came to us, actually to the policy meeting when I began the board. And after everything with I Am Jazz and a whole, each elementary school, basically promoting the opt-out for families who didn't really understand the whole purpose, and and things that happened after that, but that was brought to the policy committee to consider removal of the policy. And so I know there were questions about changing, because controversial issues, when we've heard awful comments at the podium about LGBTQ and specifically, moreover, transgender students, that when people said my kids aren't controversial issues, right? Because that was being used and elevated. So I understand the name change, and that's something we were talking about in 2019, and it got pushed off because it was supposed to go to DEI, all that good stuff. But one of the pieces of that that's different from this one is that, I mean, it's pretty much, I don't know if we have anything from the current policy in this revised policy, because with the controversial issues policy, it's centered on encouraging our teachers to be able to teach, these topics that may, things that are going on in the country today, news, and applying that. I listened to my child's social studies teacher and talking about, applying all of those real world things going on and having those discussions. So anyways, I'm going on a tangent here. But it's more like that specific policy is more encouraging for our teachers to do it. One section that was not in there that previously could have been accepted was the right of students to be able to have free speech as well. And so I was kind of advocating, if we were going to stick with that policy, to put that piece back in, because I think that's important. To research whatever topic they want, and not have to notify the teacher, for the teacher to notify the parent that, the student's going to talk about supporting gay marriage, But there's a tiny piece that is the opt-out component. So that was something, that could have been taken out, and so that was being explored, and so now the policy is strictly opt-out. There's no language about the encouragement of tackling difficult topics and what that would look like, and so yeah. Does that help? It's totally a piece of it, of the opt-out, is now this entire instructional materials policy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lauren? Trustee Gold, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's been in the packet, so yes.
Okay, so I'm just, because it does say, properly introduced and conducted complex instructional materials can help students learn to identify important issues, explore fully and fairly all sides of an issue, weigh carefully the values and factors involved, and develop techniques for formulating and evaluating positions. So I thought that came from the prior. Okay. Is that?
Sorry, is that
No. I'm just asking because I thought that was the part that was like encouraging teachers to teach. Is there something else you were referring to that's not in it anymore? About encouraging teachers to explore?
I was talking about the entire policy. So not like,
Oh, no.
we pretty much didn't do edits of like the line thing that we would do. If we did, it pretty much wouldn't be here. I mean, maybe that sentence. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No, that's why I'm asking. I'm honestly just clarifying.
so yeah, we have like this entire, like the current policy, and what we have now is sort of, we didn't really completely focus on this policy and then start working at it. We had a whole other, policy worked out. Can you explain,
I guess I have some question on that too. Yeah, it's on. I see that. I see, embracing diversity and inclusion as it strives to provide a variety of perspectives for students to consider, encourages the use of resources from different backgrounds and topics. I guess I'm a little confused as well.
I think what is I think what Trustee Eastep is saying is that we didn't take the original policy and redline or greenline it. We took parts of that policy and parts of other policies or parts of other documents and created this new document along with our own ideas and different pieces that were brought in along over the course of the last 10 months. So is that what you're saying, that we didn't redline and greenline? Like, this is a new policy instead of, even though parts and pieces of it might be there. But I think if I could also just echo what Trustee Gold and what Treasurer Gerby are saying, is that it does, and I agree with them, that it does seem to be encouraging teachers to embrace identities of students in their teaching and taking risks in that way.
Yeah, I'll even go further on to say that, right. And so I want to get back, if you don't mind me interjecting about, so as far as the personally objectable language, I read that and I understand what you're saying about, like, I certainly don't want individuals to think that they are personally objectionable. The hard part for me is you just talked about, this policy reflects for me 9 months of collective work and but my point is, like, I guess I'd want to know what language specifically we'd want to replace that with. And the second thing is, I will tell you that I want to hear from our community about any changes that we might make then to it, and from the team of you if we were to change it now. So
I can respond with an idea.
Okay.
So I would just make it that's I would just neutralize that sentence. So I would just make it very neutral in saying that identifies that instructional materials are, I would rephrase it perhaps like, after reviewing materials, after careful review of the instructional materials, a parent, guardian, student has identified sections that they would like to either have a discussion on. I would just neutralize it because the terms personally objectable are like,
yeah.
I
So
don't know.
I can respond.
I would just neutralize.
Yeah, I can respond to that piece because that's a piece that we had discussion. We had lots of discussion on those two.
And I
words
would
at
not
the
know
table.
that because I didn't hear the
exactly. So we did have a lot of discussion around the table. That and again, we have decided whether or not we're taking different pieces of the legal team's advice or not. Those two particular words were identified as words that legal thought needed to be in there because they have legal bearing on and have been used in other, not necessarily policies here, but over the last couple of years especially. But I think Lauren and I think Trustee Gold and Trustee Eastep and I don't want to speak for you. I would be fine with neutralizing that and removing that also, because I do feel like my opinion on whether or not this policy is put into practice in the district is really about allowing for those conversations to happen between our teaching and learning team, including teachers and families, so that we can meet the individual needs of students regardless of their personal objections. So I guess I'll just speak for a minute on this. I don't know, I'll just say it. I hesitate to even say anything because I feel like, and my husband hates it when I say I feel like, so I'll just say, because he's like, it doesn't matter what you feel, just say what it is. So I'll just say that I hesitate to say much because it has happened over the course of the time that we've been working on this policy that lots of misinterpretation has happened. So what I will say is that when we were talking about removing controversial issues, it was important to me, both professionally and personally, that people were not seen as the target of this policy. And I hesitate to put in a list of protected classes because I don't want to give a checklist for people to say, yep, I want to check out of all of these things. And that has historically been something that people have used with other forms that have circulated nationally. And so I just want to say that was my thinking behind this. The other piece that I want to say is that, I don't know. I'm going to stop right there for now, and then I'll come back to it later. But I did want to say that piece, that I did not intend to open a door for people to opt out of identities. However, I also didn't want to provide a list. So that was my thinking. I'll own that. One other thing that I'll say is that we do have, and I'm not centering religion, so I want to explain this clearly. We do have a policy that allows people to opt out of things based on personal objections, including their religion. And when they do so, there is not an obligation to provide an alternative assignment. It is also not, you can read through those policies, but those are legally required opt-outs. And parents can choose to use those, and it ends the conversation. So if a parent claims that it is a violation of their religious freedom, then the conversation ends. This policy, should parents decide to use this policy versus that one, it allows for a conversation between the teaching and learning staff and the family. And what has been noted by our teaching and learning team is that when families have been open to those conversations, a couple of things happen. Perspective is often revealed, and sometimes through those conversations, minds start to change. And I'll be completely honest that my mind has changed a lot through conversations like that. And I think a lot of us have experienced growth in that area when we have those conversations. So my intent was to at least allow for those conversations to start happening, and to allow for it to start happening in a space that is supportive of our teachers. Because when those conversations are happening, when a parent approaches a teacher independently, we don't have the outcome that this policy provides. And in fact, we don't have consistency from one classroom to the next or from one building to the next. And the outcomes that have been shared with us based on those conversations, to me, the things that are happening are not, the outcomes, even with the best of intentions from teachers and parents, would not be acceptable, in my opinion, under this policy. And so that's what I'll say about this for now. If anyone else wants to say anything, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask or answer.
I just wanted to clarify. Did you say that the religion in the curriculum policy doesn't give opportunity for an...
No, what I'm saying is that under when we had the list of things that from the things that are legally required to opt out of, the religion in the curriculum, if parents deem that something violates their religion, it doesn't need to be there doesn't need to be a discussion. They are legally allowed to opt out of that then. Where there could be a discussion, but they don't have to have that discussion. According to when the lawyer sent us the list of items that are legally obligated.
Okay, so so the school will honor a written request for her child to be excused. Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't say may honor, it says will honor?
Yeah, and I think it's word for word the current. Yeah, so it's like that, pretty much that paragraph, except for in the religion in the curriculum, it's like the opposite. It says no student shall be exempted from attendance in a required course of study on the grounds that the instruction therein interferes with the free speech of his or her religion. And so, but then it's like, however, after careful review, then we're going to honor the request. So, yeah.
I thought the major difference was that if someone had a religious objection, your child never has to sit in any, they don't have to sit anywhere, but there wasn't an alternative assignment that was given, right? I thought that was kind of the dividing line between the two reasons, between the general opt-out policy versus the religious policy. Is that not right?
So it says the student will be provided with alternative learning activities during the times of such parent requested absence. So it's the same, and that's from the religion one. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Treasurer Gerby?
If you don't mind. All right, so I have a couple of things. We don't keep a lawyer here with us like other districts. It would be really helpful to me right now to be able to ask this question. That 2270 language, I wasn't here when it was adopted. I wonder if that language reflects state law, and if that's the reason why that language is there. If somebody
So is hang on one second. Is 2270 the religious one that? Okay. So perhaps a point of order to President McVeigh would be that we've shifted policies.
No, I don't mean to ask that question. It just it got mentioned.
but I think that we should. I realize there are tentacles between the two, right? But I think we should primarily focus on the reading of this one.
That's fine with me. I
And
can
if
go
the committee would like to take the other one up, super. Their choice. But
Well,
I just want to
well, and I'll just say
for
for clarification that in the legal document from the lawyer, and this is in state law, so I'm not violating that, but it says that schools may be required to opt out of certain requirements when necessary to accommodate a student's ability or religion. And so if you look at that document that was sent a while ago, it's on page 2, where it lists each of the legally required recognized opt-outs.
Okay.
So it lists 5, and then it's down into the paragraph underneath that.
So can I say, that was something that we talked about, right off, that there's no Michigan law about, it does list what can be opted out of, the sex ed, there's a whole opt-out with that. And then, or what is required as well. But yeah, even under, we read the parent rights thing and laws and everything, and regardless
you're referring
of...
sorry, just to make sure, when you say parent rights, you're referring to MCL 380, is that 38010?
There's a couple of...
Okay, that's okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yep, 38010, and then the power of parents and legal guardians policy and guidelines, which is section 3801137. But yeah, that was one of the things, and federally there's no, and that's on anything, so it's not religious specific, it's not personal objectable specific. So yeah, and I think that was confirmed by the law firm that we're not legally required to have that little section that's popped in that policy as well, with the opt-out, but we're not talking about that, considering it. So I guess on this topic right now, just a couple weeks ago, a federal judge made a decision to not overturn the decision of a super brave school board who took a stand against allowing families to opt out of inclusive curriculum. Specifically, they were wanting to opt out of gender identity and sexual orientation with books that had been approved. And they have amazing, DEI policies. And so they were like, hey, we have these policies here, and we do not, that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here in this district. And so the people who were challenging this decision, this was in Maryland, at Montgomery County Schools District, and so the specific families who were suing, and it's still, that was kind of like an injunction thing, but it was based on religion. So in fact, whenever, I mean, that was a component when we're talking about religious right to do it, that federally was, they made a statement that that is not aligned with the Constitution and stuff, so.
If I may jump back in. So I appreciate the bravery of that, and I think to pivot back to 2240, the reality of, for me, like, I see the last line of this opt-out request must impact the education of our students by removing instructional materials supported by SAS vision from the classroom at large. So I'm hoping we're also kind of capturing the essence of that there. And I want to make sure I say one more thing, and then I'll probably fade a lot. But wholeheartedly, I want to say how much I agree as an educator with the perspective that Jenny offered regarding conversations that can be difficult for educators to have, and that this policy is designed to attempt to allow those, to encourage those conversations. That's how I read this, right? Is that we are encouraging people to say, okay, this is what we see, and let's talk about it. And it's not just about, it's about a whole lot of different kinds of issues that we talked about over the last few weeks. And I wholeheartedly want, like, this policy in my, that's probably my favorite part of this whole thing, is that it empowers our educators and empowers our leadership to have a process for how those things occur. And I guess what I would say to us is that we're an evolving district all the time, right? So 2240, I doubt this is the last time if we pass this, it could very easily then become the next policy committee, and they say, okay, we evaluate it, we look at how it's being applied, and we say, okay, this wasn't, perfect, and this wasn't our entirety of our intent, and we say, okay, then let's sharpen it up and let's modify it. So to me, I see every policy that we have as something that I like this because it does that strength for our staff and for our leaders. And then it says, okay, and if it's not perfect, then we'll evaluate it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So this is a form. It's not, so we opted for, it doesn't say written request anymore, it says form. So I think that kind of goes out of our hands at that point. So I don't know, I mean, we could say that there's going to be these conversations and families, like kids aren't going to be allowed to opt out of advisory time or, Hornet time, when in fact they are. And maybe it's because we didn't change the handbook to reflect the current policy, but that is in fact happening. And so, I think we could sit here all day and say, like, for instance, the teacher last year who, for a parent of one child, only allowed LGBTQ books to be read once a month, so that parent, for their child, could bring them in later and make sure that they weren't able to hear that one story. So if my family's in there, we're queer, like LGBTQ family, if my child was in that class, you're limiting it to one day a month, like that's just pathetic. So that has been allowed to go on. The book George, which is now called Melissa. This happened, it was after the I Am Jazz thing. And, it was a book that was read out loud in 6th grade, as all other books were read out loud. And so then that book, because of a complaint of a couple of parents, and went public, that book had to have options offered. So, and it wasn't allowed to be read out loud. I'm able to affirm that because my child was in that class later. And I was like, oh, you know, they have the book, like Melissa. And so she was super excited. And then it was like, you know, nope, I haven't read it yet. Nope, teacher hasn't read it. And then there were like 5 options of different books that children could choose to read silently. You're totally impacting my family. You're impacting, you know, the families that we heard from tonight, and the families who, honestly, even more now than, you know, before, are probably afraid to speak out with the things going on across the country. And so we can't, those decisions are like, all I've heard is, yep, that's the right decision. That, like, that was okay to do that, to have a teacher do it, read it once a month, and not even thinking about, like, how that impacts others. And, you know, honestly, I think about the children who who are LGBTQ and don't have supportive parents at home. And we are saying we're going to take that book or that, you know, representation that, you know, may make them feel seen. We're going to take them and put them in the library, that student, because a parent may think that, you know, oh, you know, I think my child's gender expression, you know, I'm worried that, you know, they're LGBTQ or whatever. And so that doesn't align with, you know, our current policies. So I'm just saying, like, with the administrative guidelines, that could go anywhere. I think this is where the answers are, is our policy and how we allow that. So, you know, you were talking about the list, Jenny, and listing, like, this is what you can opt out of, like, right, the checklist, but not about what you can't opt out of. Before we started working on this policy officially, this was beginning of the year, anybody can Google this, Great Schools Initiatives, where they were using the opt-out for sex ed, which is legally required. And actually with the book George, they were trying to take it out, Sex Ed Advisory Board, and say this is a book that's for the Sex Ed Advisory Board to seek approval from the board. So that's happening with the Great Schools Initiatives, which allow, well, there's a form, and we've had at least one be turned in here where you can you have to disclose, you know, your child's, if the school finds out your child is, you know, LGBTQ, you have to contact the parent. You don't want your child to hear announcements about, you know, the Gay Straight Alliance meeting. You don't want your child to see a rainbow flag. You know, it was, and I understand, like, why are we working on this now? Like, right when that came out, and you know, I just, you cannot be neutral. I'm sorry, like, there's no, that's like, there's a flag policy out there from Neola, and fortunately we didn't take it up, but, you know, it's neutral, so you check, you know, Michigan flag, American flag, but then you're saying all of these other flags are not allowed to be hung up. So you're basically making it
So I'm going to call us back to
broad
point
and
of
neutral.
order again, because I think we're getting off the topic of the current policy, and I apologize for interrupting you. But I would like to bring us back to this current policy. So if we could just bring our time and attention back to the policy at hand.
this is how the policy is being implemented.
Okay, I thought we were getting onto policies that we have not adopted. So just a couple of things. First, just so it's clear to everyone, the part of what inspired me to look at this were the examples that are being shared tonight. So Hornet Time, a blanket opt-out. Pleasant Ridge, only in one classroom teaching a topic one time a day, once a month. Those were things that were brought out of discussions with individual teachers. And so that was one of the things that I wanted us to bring back together so that our teaching and learning team can work together with families and with teachers to support plans that honor all of the students in that classroom, and that they don't remove curriculum that might or resources that might impact the students as a whole. In terms of the GSI form, that is a checklist. It's a blanket opt-out. We specifically say in this draft that we would not allow for blanket opt-outs, that it is instructional materials that parents can look at. And as far as I know, flags and general announcements and Hornet Time could not be opted out of as a blanket opt-out, that it would have to be a specific instructional material in terms of this particular policy. So I'll respond to those in terms of this particular policy. This policy also specifically states that our form, the form that has been developed by the teaching and learning team, is the only form that can be submitted for an opt-out, not other forms like the GSI. Dr. Latch.
Right. I don't want to try to influence specifically how you determine what we do next with this policy, but I do want to provide a little bit of context just with like how often is opting out happening in the district? Very rarely. How many kids are currently opting out of advisory time at the middle school? 0. GSI forms, we don't sign them. So I just want to provide that context. Well, I talked to Principal Chekowitz and I asked how many people are opting out of advisory time at this current moment, and she had said 0. So I do want to provide that context.
And just to extend on when you're saying parents are rarely opting out, I do think that is true in terms of like in terms of a general opt-out, like when they're contacting the superintendent or the principal or the Board of Education for an opt-out. I can say as a former educator here and in talking with educators that it's happening more frequently in a situation where parents are approaching a teacher individually and then parents are having to make adjustments, and that might not be reported in the data. And so this policy would support teachers. And so that, and I brought this up before, but when a teacher, and you know, we have teachers on this board, but when a parent approaches a teacher one-on-one and says, can you do this for me? It's a difficult conversation that can create a wedge or a barrier between parents and school, and that is not good for kids. And so this particular policy invites other voices to the table so that it isn't a one against one or you know, that situation.
So for one, if people are very rarely opting out, why are we spending so much time and energy and resources and possibly have to spend money to open it up even further to a point that, I mean, I guess that's the purpose, that you can't just say, you know, whatever language is currently now. I don't know where has this huge push been from then? I think that's what I was talking about with the GSI form that we received, or sorry, that was brought out in January, February. Is this like in response to that we're actually working on the policy? Like that, I mean, there's connection there. What?
I'll wait for you to finish. I don't get the connection yet. Sorry. between the GSI forms and you all working on the policy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's what, like Ginny said, that that's where the things that came in. I mean, I actively worked on this policy to make it as best as it could possibly be, but we're still missing the, in my opinion, and why we were hoping to keep this policy and work together was not to make it, so it to make sure that you cannot opt out of people, individuals, marginalized groups who are protected class of citizens, that you could not just opt out of those families or those people. Like, you know, it's like, okay, let me go through here and see how many, you know, topics or, you know, like that are about black families. I want to opt out of that. Like, that's horrible. And I think that's kind of where, you know, that statement, you know, should be included, to be clear that, because otherwise we're stating that that is okay, because this has been a conversation and this has been why we've talked about this policy, because we've seen it play out. I mean, publicly, there were a couple people who spoke out, and here and at the policy meeting, I heard horrible things about gender transition and, you know, just like, it's been awful. Like, so whenever we, you know, we hear a lot from that, that's what I'm hearing. So if it's very rare and those are the people who are tending to opt out with those concerns, hateful bigotry comments, I'm not saying all, comments that have come up, why aren't we being responsible and inclusive of people who are, you know, protected classes? It's yeah, I don't know. I did want to, just while I'm here, I just want to read this. It's our current policy, and it's very linked to what I'm talking about on the transgender and non-binary students policy. And I believe I read this in the policy meeting. Saline Area Schools supports students in becoming ethical and responsible citizens. Students demonstrate this attribute when they see beyond themselves to the needs of others, contribute to their community, promote equity, take responsibility for the environment, and demonstrate respect, empathy, and compassion. This is from the SAS Compass, Ethical and Responsible Citizen. Research shows that LGBTQ students who attend schools with curriculum that is inclusive of LGBTQ people, history, and events experience a better school climate and improved academic outcomes. Curriculum serves as a mirror when it reflects individuals and their experiences back to themselves. At the same time, curriculum serves as a window when it introduces and provides the opportunity to understand the experiences and perspectives of those who possess different identities. That's from the GLSEN's 4 supports. We did not include this specifically, but the inclusive curricular standards under GLSEN says inclusive curriculum, it improves school climate. It is essential that we oppose discriminatory curriculum bans and call them what they are: prohibitions on truthful teaching about our country's history and truthful representations of human diversity that promote racism, homophobia, and transphobia. Discriminatory curriculum bans ill prepare all students to live, work, and thrive in our diverse society, and particularly harm students who are BIPOC and LGBTQ plus. So I again, things that are going on across the country. I know GLSEN has also spoke out against what I talked about at the last meeting, against the curriculum opt-out laws, and states that have had that, they have moved forward to do the Don't Say Gay and trans laws. So I feel like if we don't specifically name that, because we know that that is what's happening, maybe it's rare, but it's happening. And so I'm gonna leave it with that.
Okay, before I say anything, I just wanted to open the floor to people who maybe haven't had an opportunity to add to the discussion this evening. Anything? Nope. Dr. McVeigh, I know you
Jenny,
had some.
I just wanted to apologize for having to leave the table, and I will go back. I know we're not voting on this tonight. I will go back and watch the footage from what I missed briefly, just dealing with being only parent around and having a situation at home that I needed to respond to. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Dr. McVeigh?
Earlier, Vice President Stebbins said she wanted to neutralize the term personally objectionable. Well, let's just focus on the one word, is objectionable. That is a fraught term. It really is. I get that. And I've been trying to, as an English major, I've been trying to find other words for it, and that fit with the whole concept here. And anything I'm saying now is not to cast aside anything that Trustee Eastep had said too, but the word I think about is challenging, personally challenging. And something that Dr. Gold had said in the last meeting was that sometimes things come up, bubble up, that are short-term, short-lived, just it's happening now. A trauma happened, everything from a dog dying to a divorce happening to whatever. And as a result, the parent thinks that the student is going to find the curriculum particularly overwhelmingly challenging. Those are the situations that I imagine that this applies to. Overwhelmingly challenged. Can we just take a break from this? Can kid be excused? Can you find him something else or her something else to do? This is where I see, and the other thing I wanted to say, so I don't know if we have time to change the language, especially in light of what you had said, Secretary Miller, that this is the language that the lawyers think it's going to work. So I don't know what to do with the word objectionable.
I mean, but if the table agrees, I would be fine also with it just saying, if after careful review, it could just say, just after careful review, a parent or guardian, etc., may fill out a district opt-out form. We could just take that piece out completely.
Will the policy committee be then wordsmithing that chunk for us to come back to the table yet again?
That is up to the table.
All right. And the other thing I'd like to note, for Treasurer Gerby made a comment that made me think about this sort of policy and all policies like it. It's not permanent. We're not chipping this into stone by any means. And then what Trustee Eastep noted was that the U.S. District Court of the state of Maryland on August 9th said, hey, parents can't opt out of LGBTQ stuff. So the laws governing all of this stuff are changing rapidly. We really are, as a district, on the cutting edge, and we are going to see this again. And this is a best first draft or a best latest draft of a policy that's difficult and challenging. And Trustee Eastep has noted many possible situations where it could be challenging and difficult to implement and disruptive and difficult for our LGBTQ students. Get it. Absolutely get it. And then Dr. Lodge had said, well, it's extraordinarily rare. And the GIS forms that came out, is it GIS? I think I got that right. GSI forms that came out, we have one or two come to the front office, and they were summarily dismissed. So we have students who have tried to opt out of things like Hornet Time, it has not worked. Or they've changed their minds, or things have happened. So, again, advisory, I'm sorry, extraordinary, rare, but still possibly out there. And then I've heard from the parents who said, I want to know that I can, if there's an issue, whether it's LGBTQ or anything, I need to know that I have the right to be able to press pause and enter a negotiation with the teachers. I also absolutely get that as well. So the last thing, and I'll be quiet for the rest of this, I do want to thank the policy committee, first names Susan, Jennifer, and Lauren, for twisting and working and molding this language to what it is now, but it's not the final step. It's 2 years from now, some board is going to be at this again, talking about it.
Yes, please.
So I think the question as far as I understood as the newest member of the policy committee, as to why we were taking it up now, was because people didn't like the title controversial issues, so we were actually trying to make it better. Now, I guess maybe that's not, but that was my understanding, is that we were trying to make that part of things better. In terms of the personally objectionable, I think we landed on that because some of us really wanted something that said cause potential harm. So that it spoke to specificity of the situation, whether that was that a family wanted to deal with questions around gender, sex, sexuality at home for a while, or whether it was that there was a child with an eating disorder, or whether that it was that somebody had been assaulted, that there would be some conversation. And my hope was, and when we talked about harm, that would stop blanket opt-outs, because it would be like, this particular book has language in it that we feel would be harmful to our child right now for whatever reason. And I know there was some feedback from parents, like, we don't want to have to explain our child's trauma to you. And I get that, but I just think it would be more like, take my word for it, my child would have trauma around this, or harm. And that was trying to make it go for these very specific scenarios. So I think that was the reason we put personally objectionable, because I think it started out with objectionable, and that seemed worse. So then we said personally objectionable, like, for whatever reason, it's not ideal, but I just want to give you some sense of where that language. My fear about leaving it as just a parent submits a form is then, like, to some extent, why are we even writing a policy? Because if the policy has nothing specific about it as to what the board's vision for the administrative guidelines might be, do we even write a policy? I mean, I thought we were kind of trying to set out some sort of vision or guidelines. So I don't know the answer to that, but I think that would be the counter argument to leaving it very vague. Like, submit a form. Well, what is the form supposed to look like? That, if we leave it that vague. I don't know. I keep going back and forth on it because I don't think it's easy. I do think people can have different times or small objections. Like, I heard some objections to Melissa, not because of the overall theme regarding transgender people, but because of some normalization of pornography, for example. So I don't think all objections are automatically, I feel like we get into these boxes where it's like, if you object to anything, then you object to everything. And I thought that was what we were trying to get at, was trying to make it a narrowly drawn process. I don't know that that's where we landed, but that is, I think, was the intent that I had anyways.
So, Dr. Gold, to kind of semi-quasi answer that question, I think that the policies are created to provide guidance to the administrators who have to implement them. And it was drawn to my attention that during my 2-minute ramble, I may have said LGBTQ issue, and my apologies, that didn't mean to say that LGBTQ people are an issue. So just to clarify that, to muddy that.
Okay, I think what I would like to propose is that we do a once more, if anybody has anything else to say, and then if anyone has a motion as to what we do next, if that's how we move forward, or however we move forward, Dr. McVeigh, you can decide that, because that will fall to you. So I think if we do a once more down the table, if anybody has anything to say, final words. Trustee Eastep?
So with the controversial issues title and language, I want to point out that you've heard here tonight and over this past year during meetings from some of those same parents. It's not about the name, it's about the harm of opting out and contacting families and saying, hey, you know, we're about to do this, just FYI, you can opt out. And so I want to be very clear about that. And maybe conversations have changed on that, but and you know, I'm hearing about the ability to opt out of these other topics, or I mean, I think Dr. Gold and I have shared experience with you know, talking about like kindergartners or first graders and 9/11. Like, you know, my child brought home a book of 9/11 and was into all of these military things, and I'm like, holy cow, like so, you know, I understand those situations and stories and like the social emotional piece of it, right? But if that's what we're saying here, and that's what we're trying to go for, why are we not saying you can't opt out of identities based on bias?
Okay. Anyone else with a final word? Okay. I just wanted to clarify one thing that in terms of and I hate to even speak about all of this, but I do feel like there have been a lot of allegations and accusations. So I'm just going to say that this particular policy does provide for inclusive curriculum, and in fact does not support a ban of curriculum. It provides for a way for teachers to be more inclusive and not impact the greater majority of students by accommodating the minority or one or two parents who may request for something different. So I guess I read that a little bit differently, that when I look at, when I hear the report from GLSEN that you've shared, that I hear that we are, through this policy, opening doors and avenues for teachers to be more inclusive. And if at all possible, I would still love to see the report that you're referring to from GLSEN, because I haven't received that. So if there's a way that you can, I know I could look it up and I've tried, but if you can send me directly, that would be helpful for me to read that and process that.
So.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry for interrupting.
Dr. Gerby. Oh my gosh.
Treasurer
yeah,
Gerby.
I guess I would say like one last thing. I would say that if I was making one last comment, is I would say that like, well, I don't think, you know, personally objectify or objectionable and all of that is like, I think this reflects a lot of work in 9 months and a team coming together and building this. And so I guess if you're asking this trustee right here, I think it's time for us to say yes or no on it at some point. So that's kind of where I'm at on it, is that like it's gonna evolve but like over the years. But I agree, I want to open those doors, so for me, like I'm ready.
I'd like to make a motion that if it's acceptable, I can talk right now about that. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that this policy returns to the policy committee for a final review of the language based on our discussions, and then be brought back for a final action vote, or a final vote, or a vote, sorry. Pardon, the language is a bit scrappy right now.
So in order for us to be completely clear on what that means. Can you speak specifically to the pieces that you would like us to address? Because I think
Yes.
when we send it back and forth, it just becomes more of the
Yes.
same.
If you want specifically, the line that begins "if after careful review" and ends with the word "form." I'd like you as a policy committee to review that. One last time, I've heard changing words and I've heard cutting out. So if you could just like land on something and bring it back to us. Do you want a proper motion for that? Because I don't think any of the other phrases are going to be changed.
But to go to action, it probably needs to be solidified on second reading.
That's fine. I'll just speak again to what Trustee Gold had said, that we've been round and round on that, and this is what we've landed on. So we can continue to go back
Right.
and go round and round. If someone here at the table, apart from the three of us, has language, I think that that's what needs to happen, because we have spent multiple meetings on this
Well-
particular phrasing.
Well, then that being the case.
Let's just take a temperature
when
on it,
that-
because I'll withdraw the request if I appreciated Lauren's framing of it. I just didn't want to have the same situation where we had a title that was
Right.
controversial issues and have a child or a person feel
Okay.
that they were a controversial issue. But I appreciated some of the clarification Lauren gave.
But
So
I
don't
wanna-
wanna.
I feel like I still have the floor over this motion. So if I could, I've not heard a second yet, and if that's the case, then it just dies and we just leave it. Well, the motion was to send it back to the committee for review. And at this point, hearing what Secretary Miller says, I'm going to withdraw that motion at this point. It's going to be as an action item on the next agenda if there are no major edits to it, I suppose.
I think the bigger question, or if we were going to have a motion, is whether or not the language regarding identities needs to be. That's really the sticking point with the community. That's a tougher issue. I mean, but that's what Trustee Eastip has been highlighting, and that's the tougher issue versus that one phrase. If we were going to take anything back to committee, that's the sticking point. That's the issue we hear most about.
I have to think about this because we're not exactly tabling it. I'm hearing that the language isn't going to be changed. Or that particular sentence. Do you think there are other parts that are going to be changed? Should I make them? No, you had requested. Okay. You don't think that the language is going to be changed, so there's no need then to bring it back to the policy committee meeting. So I guess we should just close the discussion for the evening. Yeah. And then go on to the next item, which would be Treasurer Gerby's brilliant 2-minute report.
Yep, I'm gonna do my best. All right, so I appreciate the Finance Committee met at 5 o'clock, and we had a pretty full agenda. I've got a few things I would like to talk about. Number one, we're looking at our count, and we're looking at it all the time, and we're tracking close to projections, but the official count day is October the 4th, so we will hope to present more solid numbers, at a later time, but October 4th is the official count. And like I said, all projections are looking like we'll be close. If you remember, we projected somewhere 67 to 69 students of a loss, okay? And then we talked about hiring and FTE adjustments, and we also, and when we did that, we're developing, and we need some time to do this. The Finance Committee is developing, and I shouldn't take any credit for it. It's really Dr. Lodge. A restructuring plan for what would be our goals for if we had to make decisions or make restructuring decisions based on a 1-year plan, but we'd actually like to develop something that has like a vision for a multi-year process we're in a really weird spot with our finances where with this one-time money and, you know, but our structures don't reflect this one-time money. It's really a weird time to be, I'll be honest, to be involved with finance in that regard, because we can't live forever on one-time money, and we can't expect it to keep coming in either. So like, I really appreciate that Dr. Lotch is leading that discussion with his team, and he anticipated and said that sometime in November we think, or we hope, we'll be able to talk more about that restructuring plan with the board as a whole. So there's that. Number 3, we talked about support personnel. The reality for us is that we've had some challenges with busing, custodial. I was so happy to meet the parapros, and thank you for driving a bus. And like, okay, like these are so important to our students and to our families. And so we looked a lot at benchmarking and like, where are our salaries and where are our wages and our benefits and our, you know, opt-outs of, you know, how much are we paying if people opt out of health insurance and all of that. And the reality for us, if I just might speak freely, is that we need to look to be more competitive with these things. If you look at them, I mean, there are some things where it's like, okay, yeah, because other districts are out competing us financially for bus drivers. So like, anyway, so that's something we looked at, and that's just my reflection of the team, I believe, today, or at least from the chair's perspective. And then the last thing I need to, or would like to talk, I actually have 2 more things. One more thing, district, it is super important, if I may have like the ability for our district to still identify our free and reduced individuals. And the reason for that is because I am so excited about the lunch changes by the state to provide food and, you know, to make sure that no student has food insecurity. But there are other things we do to support students as well, such as reduced athletic fees, community ed supports, and we want to provide those things to all of our students still. And so, like, we need to identify those things so that we can provide those things to anybody who would benefit from that. So if, you know, if you're hearing me out there, please help us with providing that information. We want to do that. And then the last thing is audit. So we anticipate coming to the board with an audit, with our audit presentation. It's kind of closing up right now, and I would anticipate the audit report sometime late October or early in November. And you should know that I conducted the audit call with our auditing firm, and I was happy to, it's state law that I have to like tell them I don't suspect fraud or anything of that sort. So. Yeah, did I miss anything?
No, just a quick note, Treasurer Gerby, you may always speak freely. And you do. So thank you for reminding us about the free and reduced school lunch aspect, and the TANF money, the temporary aid to needy families that we need to keep track of. Board and administration reports, we'll let Dr. Lotch start.
I did just want to thank everybody for a great start to the school year. I really have gotten a lot of positive feedback when I've been out in the buildings. I feel like the structure's in great order in the buildings, and just feeling very positive about what I'm seeing there. So thank you all for a great start to the school year. I did just want to read one letter that I received the other day. And it says, Dear Mr. Lotch, on behalf of Michigan school business officials, it's my pleasure to inform you that Miranda Owsley has met the requirements for renewing the Chief Financial Officer certification under the MSBO Voluntary Certification Program. This is a commitment of 150 hours of professional development established by the MSBO Board of Directors through our Professional Development Committee, and the certificate will be valid from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2028. I hope you'll join us in celebrating Ms. Owsley's accomplishment. You may wish to inform your district's Board of Education, which I'm doing tonight, and our local media. So congratulations for all your hard work with professional development, Miranda.
Down the table, we'll start at that end. If you have anything to report, please do.
I enjoyed going to the football game and watching the band and the dance team and all the little kids running in, and excited always for the amount of medical research supported by the Chad Tuff Foundation. So that was fun to be out, and I'd like to wish those of us celebrating the Jewish New Year this weekend a sweet and happy New Year.
I'll just say on September 26th from 5 to 6 will be our next policy committee meeting for those of you who want to attend. And I also wanted to thank everyone for a great start to the school year. And one thing that I noticed today, and I think this might be the second or third time that this has happened, but when I was at Skyline this afternoon to cheer on the Hornets on the tennis courts, I noted that they rode a bus together as a team. So I wanted to again shout out the transportation department. And Dr. Lach and I were talking before the meeting that they left before 4 o'clock. So this meant that we had a bus that was in addition to our regular elementary school routes. So thank you for that. And I think that's all I have.
All right. I also want to echo how much fun orange, and I love the color orange, and Chad Tuff, and this past Friday night, and I'm excited for this weekend and the run and all of those things. So I just appreciate our community for that. I read an incredible article about our SORO officer, Officer Morgan, and I was really excited to see Officer Morgan receive the love in this article and what have you. I know Officer Gassaway is outstanding, so if you get a chance to see the Sun-Times News, I really enjoyed that and her commitment to our students. And lastly, as Secretary Miller just said, busing, right? I want to say how much I appreciate the community working with us that first week when we canceled 2 routes. That is not ideal. That is not our goal. It's not what we want to do. And so I'm thankful for the efforts to fill routes. I'm thankful for our continued recruiting efforts. And I am thankful for Rex Clary, who gets on a bus from time to time, and Steve Lach, who's still waiting to finish up that CDL because the state's taking forever, and just little things like that. So thank you to everyone involved. Appreciate it.
I just want to thank all the staff, especially like Trustee Gerby that just said the busing. I know our transportation department, they tend to get very thin during the busing routes because a lot of them are out there doing the busing themselves. And so I appreciate that extra effort that they're putting in to make sure all our busing routes are run. And then kind of like Trustee Gold mentioned, it was nice going to the football game and hearing the fight song by the marching band. That's always great.
And of course, how did I forget our student representatives? I won't make that mistake again. In fact, I'll have you start kick us off the next time.
Well, we had a student showcase prepared, but she ended up being sick today, so that's unfortunate. Yeah.
I understand you have one already lined up for next week, and then the one tonight's perhaps 2 weeks away.
She would like to reschedule. I have heard that. She would like to reschedule. She's prepared when she's feeling better.
That you're already a month ahead. Well done, well done. I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is listed in this agenda and will not be read aloud. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all listed items without discussion unless a member of the board requested any one of them be considered individually. I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the consent agenda as printed.
Support, E-Step.
E-Step support, and
I'll second.
Stebbin seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have a consent agenda. And let me just see, items scheduled on the next agenda, sir.
Yeah, the first one is I will provide an enrollment update. And then the second order of business is the CEAB, Sex Education Advisory Board, will have a meet and greet goal setting presentation. And then that will be followed by public hearing number 1 they're having, which, and I want to define this because the specific topic is body safety curriculum. It's to prevent child abuse and neglect. The main components include teaching children that they're the boss of their bodies, 2, identifying private parts and using proper terms for these parts, and 3, how to recognize and respond to inappropriate behavior. So the CEAB will be doing their presentation to the Board of Education at the next meeting. That would be hearing number 1.
And I understand that if we have questions and the audience raises questions, that they'll be addressed in the second board meeting following that, the next board meeting. Thank you. Public comment. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes. We have a few. Corey Belote is first. You're still here? Yay. And we have 8.
Green. Oh, not now it's green. Okay. So we moved from Clinton to Saline in 2009, just in time for my oldest son to start kindergarten. And we intentionally chose Saline for its proximity to Ann Arbor, the good schools, the athletic program, and music programs. Plus, it's bigger than Clinton and therefore had to be more diverse. And again, as I spoke before, I believe all children need to be able to see themselves represented in the classroom. My cisgender heterosexual boys deserve to see families like theirs with a transgender non-binary sibling. And perhaps if they did when they were in elementary school, my now almost 17-year-old wouldn't have been so stressed out in 5th grade when his twin Ev came out as non-binary. If kids had read or listened to more stories about non-binary or transgender kids, perhaps they wouldn't have tormented him so much. He was asked so many questions about Ev that he started growling at kids and running away. He grew very hateful of his twin, and a twin that hadn't changed since the two were old enough to express who they were. In our house, Batman wore a tutu. Boys slept in princess nightgowns, dressed as witches and fairies. My son didn't learn to question or dislike his twin because they were different in our house. No, it was at school and at the bus stop the kids questioned him about Ev. No one asked Ev. No one. Ev would have happily told anybody who asked them any questions all about who they were, but they went to Owen instead. And so my biggest concern with the opt-out policy is the additional work that it will have on teachers and that it may cause them to change their lesson plans. Will a teacher look at their class list and say and recognize that they'll have at least 1 to 2 or more kids who will opt out of a book, and then they'll come up with an alternative assignment, so they'll just decide we're not going to read that book. The policy is ambiguous. It allows for opt-out based on something being personally objectionable, and I know that you've been talking about that a lot. I missed in the policy, though, where it talks about bringing a discussion with the families and the teacher, and I think that would be great. The policy doesn't seem to define or give any guidance or requirement around what personally objectionable means. It sometimes seems that Saline is pro-DEI, but if pushed on the matter, allows for an opt-out. And so what happens when these kids grow up and leave Saline? Because school is so much more than just academics. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Chan-Ming Fan, you are next, sir. Followed by Libby Williams.
I want to be brief. Chang-Ming Fan, I thank you so much for giving me a second opportunity to continue. First, I like to give a praise of the learning and training. That report is much better than last time, which I understand. Thank you, which is brought up the learning and training of public school. And not only I support it, I want to add something. One of the word I want to say is 70-20-10 rule. Children learn and develop 70% based on the challenge, 20% based on relationship, interchange among the peers, 10% based on course, work, and training. So the initiative is one of the things is challenge everybody. For the new initiative, you all have the copies, but both of you our student leader don't have yet, and the parents of the Scout, and they also want to know more. So first thing I want to ask that, is it possible with your formal approval, I will give the third draft to our wonderful student leaders and also Scout leaders of the way, which is important for me to give the younger people, as I said last time, they represent the future, you represent tomorrow. What happened is that we have to challenge us in order to reach the new development of technology. And also, quite a lot of environmental change need to consider this kind of structure. So, Saline Area Light Tower. So I want to have an answer before I do next move. Mr. Mayor, and just like also Mr. McVeigh and Trust Steve, support this idea at the very beginning, want me to have some kind of presentation. But I do want to make sure we go step by step. The SALT initiative, Saline Area Light Tower, is intended to create based on the cluster of innovation and cluster of creativity. Not just Xiangming Fan have some ideas or good wish. No, it's a lot of accumulation. So therefore, please give me the answer so I can move forward. Also, your leadership, participation is critical. And the volunteerism is the whole thing. South should be the largest social gathering place, the largest school for us to learn, and the best way to change the environment, reduce the gap between rich and poor, have and have not. So please, I need your support and leadership, and I will give both of you first, with your permission, the third draft, if that is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Libby Williams is up, and Megan Gunnarsson is on deck.
Good evening. I understand that there are many reasons parents or students may want to opt out of a particular lesson. I also understand that a policy without the teeth mentioned by other parents today that protects marginalized groups will absolutely be used to opt out of actual people some parents find objectionable. This is not just going to happen if this policy is as inevitable as it seems. It is already actually happening. I have actually had parents tell me they've opted out of anything that a, quote, DEI teacher is teaching. Blanket statement. Whether or not it works, I don't know, but that is their intention and has already done it. These parents don't want conversations with educators. I understand it's the intention, but they don't. They no longer trust them at all. These parental groups are already ridiculing the new SEL staff that was introduced here tonight. It's already online. They don't want conversations. What will be done when this policy is used not for religious or trauma reasons, but political or bigoted ones? That's my question to this board. What will you do about it when it does happen, that it is happening? What will you do now that you know it's being used this way? If diversity, equity, and inclusion and social emotional learning are imperative to student health and societal education, it should be mandatory. People aren't optional, and it's important that students understand that, and it shouldn't be opted out of. Thank you.
Thank you, Libby Williams. After Megan Gunnarsson is Tiffany Alexander.
I always feel like I'm on top of that thing. It's the green light's on. Yeah, I just have two topics. One is about Trustee Gerby's financial plea. I just wanted to highlight that kids get captured and identified through the reduced and free lunch program for a variety of things, including healthcare options. It's kind of a sidebar way for kids to get healthcare, and so for families who may not have that, they may not know that that's a perk of actually filling out this form. So I did just want to publicly make that statement. And then also I know that I'm not going to say this right, but the school athletics versus the club athletics. The school athletics, you get a scholarship for and through community ed, but I wondered if there was any way for extracurricular clubs or club sport teams to also have their players also benefit from some type of scholarship. I did ask that question to the athletic department, and it was kind of like, oh, that's a good idea. I just didn't know how that funding could also be helped, because not everybody throws or kicks a ball. Some kids do other things, and it would be nice for them to be able to participate if the finances were available. And then I may have misunderstood, but if this was the second reading of this policy, and I can't remember the number, I just wondered if next week is the vote, when would the probable timeline for implementation be? I just wondered if there were drafts for the operational side being kind of loosely put together, because it seems like it's been on the table for a really long time. And it just would be nice to know if whatever voted in or voted out, that there's operationalization that's going to take place in a sort of a timely fashion. So I just wanted to plant that seed. Thanks.
I heard at a recent workshop that I am allowed to intervene and make comments from the table if I can, and we will get back to you very quickly on that one. All right, thank you. After Tiffany will be David. Thank you.
Hello. So I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff, and I think I'm probably scrapping most of it. First of all, I want to say that I did not catch the personally objectionable language. So I liked that. Thank you for catching that. And I wasn't really sure what I thought about it because, one, it is offensive. Two, the reality is they do find us personally objectionable. And that's the whole entire problem, is that's what they're objecting to. So I realize that I've talked to the policy committee a lot about this, but I really haven't spoken to the board very much. So I'm actually for an opt-out policy. I've actually opted out of things. I'm actually for parents' rights. What I'm not for is weaponizing parents' rights and using it as an excuse to attack various communities. And that's what this is. The reason you don't see a whole lot of people opting out is because they don't really care. They don't really think my child's harmful. It's because at Saline, we've gotten to the point you're not allowed to say, not allowed, because it's not well received. We don't like these people. We don't want them here. So the next thing is, well, we want everybody to have rights. No, they don't. No, they do not. They personally object to me. I've had these same people who've come talk to you tell me that I've never dealt with racism, and I'm lying and making it up. They don't want us here. What you're hearing from the community about identities, what you're hearing from us, and I want to be clear, this impacts black students, other children of color. When Ms. Washington was here, one of the things they said was, we want to opt out of all things Shannon. What do you think that meant? What the community is telling you is that the protections inside this policy are not enough. And you're not listening. It's not enough, because this is going to be used to attack children like mine. And there are some people who that is their intent, and you know it. It's not enough. I'm glad that it protects flags. That's a great thing. That's really important. I'm glad that it does not cover large swaths of the curriculum. That is really important. I'm glad that it is specific to assignments. That's all really great language that is very important. It does not need to go away, but it's not enough, and I'm telling you it's not, because this is going to impact children like mine, families like mine. It is going to harm them. So what you do with this, by not sending it back, by not adding in language about harm, about identities, you are not listening.
Dr. Hayward, followed by Darcy Burrick, who I don't think is here, so. Oh, you came back, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. This opt-out policy, or the struggle over this opt-out policy, has really become a microcosm of a larger national and even international fight, but ultimately it's a symbolic fight. Strip away all that symbolic baggage, and what are we actually talking about? We're talking about the kids in this district today who are feeling attacked and unsupported when materials are taken out of their class rooms that are reflecting their gender, their race, their ethnicity, their religion, their language that they speak at home, or their socioeconomic status. And if you don't think that it refers to this thing, then it's just about LGBTQ kids, look at what's going on in Florida and Texas and other states across this country, because we don't live in a microcosm. What that does is make kids feel stigmatized. It makes them feel invisible, because kids are smart and they're part of this world and part of this country. And when they see that happening, they think that all of the people in this room think that their existence is something that should be invisible and they should be ashamed of, and that they are personally objectionable. I don't know whether that sounds worse to me than controversial. Now, and teachers also are feeling a lack of support and direction from this district to support their students, which is leading them to take stuff out preemptively. It's causing a cycle of harm. Can any policy solve this? Can this policy solve this? No. You were in a position to craft a policy to support teachers and empower them to support their students. The fact that you have chosen not to send the policy back to craft it to do the right thing is disappointing, frankly, and hopefully that's something that will be revisited in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Darcy Berwick, followed by Shauna Nichols.
Darcy Berwick, parent. I did speak about this a few weeks ago, and I've come back essentially to say the same thing, which is that I don't believe that the opt-out policy is perfect, that there is room for improvement, and I think that will always be the case. But as it is, this policy is significantly better than the current opt-out policy. And we have been going at this for about 5 years. It's not cropped up all of a sudden. It's been with us since at least 2018. And you have spent a significant amount of time and resources and put a lot of work into getting this policy to where it's at. I feel like this gives parents structure and sets expectations for what parents need to do, for what teachers need to do. That's missing in what we have right now. And whether or not someone wants to have a conversation, there are people who do, and there are people that that conversation will be impactful for. Don't discount the positive things that can come from this, because there could be disaster. My hope is that, we do recognize that opting out of some work is a valuable thing. We have statutory opt-out for sex ed and a few other things. So we know that this is something we value. And I think that it deserves to be honored, whether it is what your reasoning is. There are valid reasons to want an opt-out, and that should be honored. I think that if this policy is being abused, that needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be addressed. I think that I am disappointed to hear that a teacher at Pleasant Ridge was opting someone out but using this policy rather than the religion policy. My hope is that when you have these conversations, you will funnel them down the correct path. And I know that I will be coming back and asking for accountability. I want to know how this is working out, if it's being used, if it's being abused. And I guess I would love to see an acknowledgement that it's not perfect, but that you also will be looking into it and making improvements as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy Berg. Shonda Nichols. I don't recognize you, so you know the rules. 30 seconds before the 3 minutes is up, you get the yellow card.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Right on. All right, this is my first time ever speaking at one of these, so bear with me. I'm a little nervous. Thank you guys all. I have a few thoughts. Listening to this, my question is, why are BIPOC, LGBTQ plus people, or anything DEI related lumped into the same issues as sexual assault trauma, eating disorders, etc., and allowing people who are triggered by our existence to opt out of educational instruction? That's just something that I just can't, I'm having a hard time sitting with. So why are we being lumped into that? Why are we a big piece of that trauma? We shouldn't be, but we are. You know, it's really upsetting to know that kids in this community are looked at as a trigger for just existing in their own skin and as their own selves. It continues to target marginalized people in our community as a problem and enable those who might disagree with people who are different from them to continue hateful behavior and stay uneducated against their neighbors. Another thought I have is maybe we should have a checkbox system of what you can opt out of. Maybe we should have that. And maybe we should start leaving BIPOC people and LGBTQ people education out of that. Another little thing that I was thinking about was I don't agree that the opt-out policy encourages conversation with their teacher. I didn't really see anything mentioning that. I mean, it will happen because you obviously have to talk to the teacher, but I think it puts a lot of pressure on teachers to face that one-on-one as well. So I think it's putting a lot of pressure on the teachers. But that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you very much. The next scheduled Board of Education meeting will be on September 26th at 6:30. However, we do have a special meeting planned for September 18th at 5:15. It's one quick item and then a closed session with possibly some action afterwards. The room is to be determined. And with that said, I'll use one of my 3 gavels to adjourn this meeting. Well, we're getting there. I could also say without objection. However, without objection, I'd like to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting of September 12th at, 9:44. I'm hearing no objection, so.
I was just going to move.
I said
Oh,
without
yeah,
objection.
you're getting tricky.
Now, if you wanted to object and then make a motion, that would be cool.
I don't know. Lauren
Ready?
and Susan don't look like they want to.
Don't. I've got a gavel and I've got 3 gavels and I'm not afraid to use any of them. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm special. One's from here. One's